Chapter 327. Seeing the second imperial prince's impudence, Xiao Jingxin immediately reprimanded him. Tianqing, don't be rude to esteemed Wang Fei. Xiao Jingxin was the second imperial prince's maternal grandfather, but in terms of seniority, he should be calling Long Tianqing second imperial prince. That's how he usually addressed him, but the situation was completely different now. Without Xiao Jingxin and the Duke of Qin's backing, both noble consort Xiao and the second imperial prince would suffer calamity. Grandfather, we're all on the Duke of Qin's side. Of course she has to save Mu Fei, the second imperial prince said unhappily. He used to be the most favored imperial prince, even more so than the crown prince. Now that his status had plummeted, he couldn't get used to it. Like his imperial father, he'd always been dissatisfied with His Highness Duke of Qin. Crown Prince Long Fei Yi, on the other hand, had always respected the man. But who knew that he'd end up on the Duke of Qin's side? He and his Mu Fei had been kept in the dark by his grandfather for so long. The second imperial prince couldn't accept it. If possible, he'd choose his imperial father, because he was already planning to depose the crown prince. As for his loyalty to the Duke of Qin, he had been played like that at the birthday banquet. How could he still have a chance to shine? Tianqing, don't be so impudent. Xiao Jingxin said sternly. Long Tianqing was resentful. In any case, she has to save Mu Fei. Han Yunxi really didn't know why Emperor Tianhui had given up on the perfectly fine Long Tianma in favor of this idiot. Even if Long Tianma was bedridden for a few more years, his IQ and EQ were still 100 times higher than Long Tianqing's. Han Yunxi only understood Emperor Tianhui's misgivings after she found out about the imperial uncle's wealth. Of course, that was a story for another time. Esteemed Wang Fei, please forgive me. I beg esteemed Wang Fei to save Yuru for His Highness's sake. Xiao Jingxin begged bitterly. Actually, Long Tianqing was wrong. It wasn't that the Xiao clan had helped the Duke of Qin, but that the Xiao clan's current status, his position as left prime minister, and Yuru as noble consort were all thanks to the Duke of Qin's help. Han Yunxi would naturally save Yuru if she knew it was Long Fei Ye's territory. Even if Xiao Jingxin didn't beg her, she'd still do it. Don't worry, as long as she's really innocent, I'll definitely reveal the truth. Han Yunxi got into the sedan chair as soon as she finished speaking. She didn't argue with Long Tianqing and didn't blame him at all. Xiao Jingxin couldn't help but sigh with emotion. This woman was so magnanimous. She deserved to be called Qin Wang's legal wife. Han Yunxi was taken directly to the scene of the crime, the bedroom of imperial concubine Yun. There were quite a few people present, including the Empress Dowager, noble consort Xiao, Emperor Tianhui, and a few court ladies. To Han Yunxi's surprise, Duanmu Bei, Chu Tianyin, and Chu Qingge were all present. This was Emperor Tianhui's family affairs, so why were these outsiders getting involved? Isn't Emperor Tianhui afraid of airing his dirty linen in public? Seeing Han Yunxi enter, the Empress Dowager was delighted. Yunxi, you've finally come. Everyone's been waiting for you. This old Empress Dowager, no matter when she saw her, would always smile kindly and amiably. People who didn't know would think that their relationship was very good. Han Yunxi was already used to it and went to greet her with a smile. Yunxi greets esteemed Empress Dowager and His Majesty. But the Empress Dowager actually helped her to her feet. If this was any other time, the Empress Dowager would be warm and cordial, but she wouldn't act like this. This time, it was highly likely that she was the one who'd framed noble consort Xiao. They already had evidence and witnesses, so why didn't they close the case early? Why did they ask her to help with the investigation? How strange. Could it be that they were lusting after her medicine fan? What trap was waiting for her this time? Yunxi, the evidence and witnesses are all here. Noble Consort Xiao is the true culprit behind the poisoning, but Miss Chu says otherwise. She says there's something wrong with the poison. It's not that I don't believe Miss Chu, but... As the Empress Dowager spoke, she smiled helplessly. Only when I found you did I feel at ease. As it turned out, Noble Consort Yun's death coincided with Emperor Tianhui's meeting with Duanmu Bei and the Chu siblings in the Imperial Gardens. When eunuch Luo went to report, Chu Qingge accidentally overheard him. She immediately expressed her knowledge of poisons and volunteered to take a look. By the time she arrived, the Empress Dowager was already preparing to convict Noble Consort Xiao, but Chu Qingge said there was something wrong with the poison. Although Emperor Tianhui had only given Noble Consort Xiao the cold shoulder and hadn't touched her, he should still be on the Empress Dowager's side under the current circumstances. Unexpectedly, he attached great importance to Chu Qingge's words and wanted her to investigate the matter instead. That was simply absurd. The shrewd Empress Dowager immediately sensed something fishy between Emperor Tianhui and Chu Qingge. If she guessed correctly, her lustful son had taken a liking to Chu Qingge. Chu Qingge came from one of Western Zhou's famed Chu clan, a great general's family. Given the current relations between Western Zhou and Tianning, and her background as a great general, she'd be the head of the noble consorts if she married into the imperial family. Everything in the imperial harem was under the Empress Dowager's control, so she naturally wasn't afraid of an investigation. She wanted nothing more than to raise noble consort Xue to the throne, so how could she allow anyone to compete with her? Thus, the Empress Dowager thought of Han Yunxi, the woman who'd humiliated Chu Qingge at the birthday banquet. Actually, Chu Qingge hadn't volunteered herself to please Emperor Tianhui at all. She had no idea that Emperor Tianhui had already taken a liking to her when she played the zither at the Empress Dowager's birthday banquet. Nor did she know that Emperor Tianhui's harem had such complicated relationships. Her reasons for doing so were simple: she wanted to stir up some trouble and let Long Feiyi know she was still in the capital. That way, he'd hear news about her from Long Feiyi. Han Yunxi knew poisons, but so did she. What Han Yunxi didn't, she did. If Long Feiyi could gain the support of Western Zhou's Chu clan, then he'd have more leverage against Emperor Tianhui. As soon as the Empress Dowager finished speaking, Han Yunxi had no idea what she meant when Emperor Tianhui spoke up. Muhu, Miss Chu's poison skills are exquisite. Aken is quite at ease. Han Yunxi grew even more perplexed at his words. What were Emperor Tianhui and the Empress Dowager singing? Cold as Chu Qingge spoke up, esteemed Empress Dowager, the poison found in noble consort Zhao's quarters is the same as the one that poisoned noble consort Yun. But if this poison is fatal, it'd take an entire bottle. There's only half a bottle left, so it's obvious that you're framing her. Han Yunxi glanced at the bottle and recognized it as Red Snow Dipper. It was as Chu Qingge said, poisons could only be poisoned if the entire bottle was used up. But there was still half a bottle left, so there had to be something fishy going on. Miss Chu, do you mean to say that I'm framing noble consort Xiao? The Empress Dowager asked bluntly. Noble consort Xiao and the court lady remained kneeling on one side without a word. Chu Qingge was a virtuous person. If not for the difference in status, she wouldn't have put the Empress Dowager in her eyes either. Her actions at the birthday banquet had already earned her disdain. Qingge doesn't dare. Qingge's only speaking the truth, Chu Qingge replied mildly. Yunxi, what do you say? The Empress Dowager turned to Han Yunxi. Although Han Yunxi wasn't sure what the Empress Dowager and Emperor Tianhui were planning, she had a clear goal: to save noble consort Xiao. There's definitely something fishy about the remaining half bottle of poison. Compared to Chu Qingge's obvious framing, Han Yunxi's words were more prudent and intelligent. At the very least, the Empress Dowager felt comfortable listening to them. But Chu Qingge only snorted disdainfully. Coward. Han Yunxi didn't mind. With a smile, she asked, "Esteemed Empress Dowager, are you planning to give this case to Yunqi?" "Of course. Since there's something fishy about it, then we should investigate it thoroughly. We can't let the true culprit get away scot-free. That's why we shouldn't frame a good person," the Empress Dowager declared justly. "Then some unrelated people can." Before Han Yunqi could finish, Emperor Tianhui spoke up. "Muhu, since it was Miss Chu who discovered something fishy, Jin thinks it's better to let her investigate the case. Jin wants to see Miss Chu's poison skills for myself." Han Yunqi couldn't help but wonder if Emperor Tianhui had taken Chu Qingge's knockout powder or something. Why was he siding with her so much? After some observation, Han Yunqi really did discover that Emperor Tianhui was looking at Chu Qingge differently. Her suspicions grew as a bold guess formed in her heart. But she wasn't sure if Chu Qingge had realized the truth herself. "Emperor, this is..." The Empress Dowager was about to refuse when Chu Qingge spoke up. "Esteemed Wang Fei, how about this? We'll investigate our own cases and see who gets to the bottom of the truth first." "Hee, that's a good idea." "Then it's settled," Emperor Tianhui agreed impatiently. A cold smile flickered past the Empress Dowager's eyes before she said, "Since the Emperor has said so, you too can investigate on your own." Han Yunqi was in a bad mood. Chu Qingge had already fallen into her hands twice, so why wasn't she giving up? Did she think investigating a case was a game? What was there to compete about? If it wasn't noble consort Xiao who'd been framed today, Han Yunqi would never play with her. Seeing that Han Yunqi had no objections, Chu Qingge hastened to add, "Esteemed Wang Fei, what do you plan to do if I find out the truth first? Noble consort Zhao's innocence and noble consort Yun's death all depend on the truth. If you find out the truth, the Empress Dowager and His Majesty will naturally reward you handsomely. What else do you want?" Han Yunqi countered seriously. Chu Qingge was at a loss for words. Still, she quickly adjusted herself. Even if this was a gamble with no chips or rewards, as long as she found out the truth first, she could trample Han Yunqi beneath her feet. Han Yunqi's poison skills were already famous in Tianning and Cloud Realm continent. As long as she beat Han Yunqi, her name would spread throughout Tianning as well. "Qin Wangfei, how about we set a time limit of 3 days?" Chu Qingge asked. "Up to you," Han Yunqi didn't care. On one side, Duanmu Bei had been paying attention to Emperor Tianhui's eyes the entire time. If Emperor Tianhui had taken a fancy to Chu Qingge, then his apology for Yao Yao would go smoothly. Chu Tianyin was paying attention to Emperor Tianhui as well. Although he disliked his little sister's foolish actions, he thought that it might be a good thing if she could stay in Tianning. With a time limit of 3 days, Han Yunqi and Chu Qingge both settled down in the palace for the sake of investigating the case. When Long Feiyi found out, he immediately sent Zhao Mama into the palace to wait on them and told her not to leave their side at all. It was only the first day, but Chu Qingge and Han Yunqi were both staying in noble consort Yun's palace to investigate the case. Emperor Tianhui actually came straight after court ended. Chapter 328. In history, there were plenty of instances where the spring night was short and the sun rose high, so the monarch never held court in the morning. It was understandable that Emperor Tianhui had come to noble consort Yun's palace right after morning court. Han Yunqi took it as a sign that Emperor Tianhui wouldn't let go of Chu Qingge so easily. "Zhen has come to see how you're going to investigate. You too should investigate and ask questions. There's no need to have any misgivings." Emperor Tianhui was still very serious. "Yes," Han Yunqi replied offhandedly. But Chu Qingge only said, "Since your majesty is so open-minded, Qingge will definitely do her best to uncover the truth." On one side, Han Yunqi couldn't help but roll her eyes. "Does that mean I won't do my best if Emperor Tianhui doesn't come?" Jin believes you. Emperor Tianhui's eyes were filled with meaning. Chu Qingge nodded. She was about to continue questioning the court lady when Emperor Tianhui added, Miss Chu, if there's anything you need help with, you can ask Jin directly. Jin will definitely help you deal with it in a timely manner. By now, Emperor Tianhui had already cast Han Yunshi to the side. Thank you, Your Majesty. If this was the past, Chu Qingge would have noticed the change in Emperor Tianhui's eyes. But now all she could think about was how to compare herself to Han Yunshi. As long as there was a way to beat Han Yunshi and show off in front of her, she'd use it without a second thought. It's Qingge's honor to gain Your Majesty's trust, Chu Qingge purposely raised her voice. Although the Empress Dowager had pushed Han Yunshi forward, Chu Qingge didn't believe the woman was sincere. She guessed that the Empress Dowager had some sort of scheme waiting for Han Yunshi. Emperor Tianhui would never help Han Yunshi either. Perhaps he had prepared a trap for Han Yunshi to jump into as well. Even if she couldn't win the Empress Dowager's support, Emperor Tianhui's trust was enough to beat Han Yunshi. So what if Han Yunshi was Long Fei Ye's official consort? So what if rumors said she was favored by the Long Fei Yi? Long Fei Yi was such a cold and busy person. How could he be by her side all the time and help her with everything? Chu Qingge was speaking so loudly that Han Yunshi would be embarrassed if she didn't look over. Her face was filled with confusion. What was Chu Qingge being so smug about? Hadn't she realized that winning Emperor Tianhui's trust wasn't an honor, but a misfortune? Sigh, Han Yunshi sighed softly in her heart. Esteemed Wang Fei, His Majesty must have taken a fancy to this girl. Zhao Mama couldn't help but whisper. Granny Zhao was an old woman who had been in the palace for a long time. Actually, when Chu Qingge had been playing the zither at the Empress Dowager's birthday banquet, Zhao Mama had already noticed something amiss. But she hadn't taken it to heart. Now that she saw Emperor Tianhui's gaze, she was 100% certain. Han Yunshi signaled Zhao Mama to keep quiet and walked into the inner room. Emperor Tianhui already hates me enough. It's better if I don't stay here and be a third wheel. It's not a good thing to ruin a marriage's fate. As soon as Han Yunshi left, Chu Qingge couldn't stay any longer. Why did that woman leave? Couldn't she stay any longer? Your Majesty, Qingge will take a look inside. Please excuse me, she said respectfully. Go on, Emperor Tianhui smiled slightly, looking very approachable. Even after Chu Qingge had turned around, Emperor Tianhui's gaze was still on her. He stared with interest at her exquisite figure and her graceful gait. As he stared and stared, his lips drew up into a satisfied smile. The more he looked, the more satisfied he felt. When Chu Qingge entered the inner rooms, she saw that Han Yunshi wasn't investigating anything, but sitting on one side and whispering to Zhao Mama. It was unclear what they were talking about, but both master and servant were wearing smiles on their faces. When Chu Qingge entered, Han Yunshi only glanced at her before ignoring her. Chu Qingge sat down across from her, but Han Yunshi ignored her to chat with Zhao Mama. Chu Qingge listened for a bit and realized that she didn't understand a single thing they were talking about. It had nothing to do with the case. Chu Qingge assumed that Han Yunshi would say something now that she was inside. After sitting for a while, Chu Qingge felt a little awkward. She dropped her lofty airs and asked coldly, Han Yunshi, judging from your expression, you must have found something, right? No, Han Yunshi was a woman of few words and didn't say much. Emperor Tianhui trusts me so much. Aren't you afraid? Chu Qingge asked next. No. Han Yunshi only replied without explaining. It was obvious that she didn't want to talk with Chu Qingge anymore, but Chu Qingge really wanted to talk with her. She wanted to know if this woman really didn't mind Emperor Tianhui's favoritism. More than that, she wanted to know what other charms this woman had to keep Long Fei Yi by her side. Han Yunshi, you don't really think the Empress Dowager is on your side, do you? But even if she wants to help you, she probably. As Chu Chinga spoke, she feigned kindness and lowered her voice. When I came over this morning, I heard that the Empress Dowager's palace lost a bunch of good things. She's so worried that she's busy searching everywhere that she doesn't have time to worry about anything else. Hearing this, Han Yunshi and Zhao Mama couldn't help but laugh out loud. Lil Thing is awesome. Chu Chinga was completely lost. Han Yunshi, what are you two laughing about? But Han Yunshi only replied with a few words. Nothing. As she spoke, she went back to talking and joking with Zhao Mama. She rambled on and on about a bunch of things while ignoring Chu Chinga. Chu Chinga was clearly here to show off, but her proud heart suddenly felt a sense of inferiority at being ignored. She gritted her teeth and left in a huff. Han Yunshi, just you wait and see. As soon as Chu Chinga arrived outside, she saw Emperor Tianhui drinking tea. Miss Chu, do you want to rest? Emperor Tianhui asked with concern. Only then did Chu Chinga realize that something was off. She felt strange, but she didn't have time to dwell on it. Many thanks for your Majesty's kind intentions, but Chinga has to seize the time. There's a bunch of court ladies outside that need to be interrogated one by one. Chu Chinga was very serious. She spent the entire morning interrogating the court ladies in great detail. She even asked a few questions repeatedly to make sure they weren't lying. She didn't realize that Emperor Tianhui was watching her the entire time she was interrogating the court lady. While Chu Chinga was both serious and diligent, Han Yunshi spent the entire morning chatting with Zhao Mama, who told her all sorts of interesting and scandalous stories about the palace. It wasn't that Han Yunshi was lazy, but that she'd already done most of her investigations. She'd examined noble consort Yun's corpse and asked the court ladies a few questions so she had an idea of what was going on. Emperor Tianhui didn't leave until noon, but soon had someone deliver a sumptuous lunch to Chu Chinga. He even thoughtfully prepared fruits and melons after the meal. As for Han Yunshi, she and Zhao Mama had to wait for a sedan chair to take them to their quarters for a meal. Their quarters were quite a distance away from noble consort Yun's palace. Chu Chinga sat by herself, elegantly enjoying her meal while Han Yunshi and Zhao Mama waited by the door. Esteemed Wang Fei, don't worry. This old servant used silver, so the sedan chair will be here soon. This old servant has arranged for a famous flower banquet in the palace for you, Zhao Mama murmured. It's fine, I'm not hungry. Han Yunshi really wasn't hungry. With Zhao Mama, a senior servant in the imperial harem, she enjoyed her meals and lodging quite a bit. But by the time Chu Chinga finished eating, the sedan chair still hadn't arrived. Zhao Mama immediately understood what was going on. She raged, those cheap bastards who take the money but don't do the work. Don't think they can disregard this old servant just because I'm no longer in the palace. When I was serving in the palace, the Empress Dowager wasn't the Empress Dowager yet. The Emperor wasn't the Emperor yet either. Han Yunshi looked at Zhao Mama, her mouth twitching. She never expected the woman to have such a valiant side. She couldn't help but think back to all those years ago, when the Empress Dowager and Grand Concubine Emperor Tianhui, and the Duke of Qin fought to the death in the imperial harem. Long Fei Yi must have been very young then. Aya, why are you guys still here? Chu Chinga's voice suddenly rang out. Han Yunshi looked back and saw the woman walking towards them. Behind her, court ladies were cleaning up the table of leftover food. Han Yunshi ignored her and murmured, Zhao Mama, let's walk over. We've got nothing better to do, anyways. Seeing that they were about to leave, Chu Chinga laughed out loud. Han Yunshi, if you're hungry, I'll tell them to stop cleaning up. You guys can go eat. Zhao Mama grew angry. This Miss Chu wasn't cute at all. Esteemed Wang Fei hadn't provoked her all morning, so why was she provoking her all the time? Miss Chu, the mistress of this palace, just died. Aren't you afraid that she'll come begging you for food tonight by eating and drinking to your heart's content in her side hole? Zhao Mama asked seriously. Chu Qingge felt a chill run down her back at those words. She subconsciously glanced back at the memorial tablet and coffin in the main hall and felt her hairs stand on end. Old servant, what nonsense are you spouting? That's a gift from His Majesty. Are you saying that His Majesty was wrong? Chu Qingge retorted. Miss Chu, esteemed concubine Yun won't be happy if you keep talking about His Majesty this and that. Esteemed concubine Yun likes to get jealous all the time, don't you know that? Zhao Mama reminded her faintly. Chu Qingge's hair stood on end, but she refused to admit defeat. What, are you jealous because His Majesty favors me? Zhao Mama laughed. What are you saying, Miss Chu? Everyone in the imperial harem knows that His Majesty has always been fair and impartial. How could he favor you? If we're talking about favoritism, His Highness Duke of Qin does it all the time. Han Yunxi didn't even plan to speak. For the first time, she realized how interesting it was to have Zhao Mama by her side. She was certain that Chu Qingge didn't understand the true meaning of Zhao Mama's words. Everyone in the imperial harem knew that His Majesty was fair and impartial. If they found out that he cared for Chu Qingge so much, she'd have a hard time staying in the palace for the next 2 or 3 days. The struggles of the women in the imperial harem were often more terrifying and cruel than the struggles of the men in court. Even the emperor himself couldn't take care of them all. Otherwise, there wouldn't be so many tragic deaths and miscarriages. As expected, Chu Qingge didn't catch the main point of Zhao Mama's words. She laughed coldly and said, "Is that so? Then why don't I see His Highness Duke of Qin delivering food?" Qin Wangfei, I heard that His Highness Duke of Qin dotes on you a lot. Now it looks like the rumors are just rumors. Unfortunately, Chu Qingge had hardly finished speaking when a eunuch announced loudly from outside. His Highness Duke of Qin has arrived. Chapter 329. His Highness Duke of Qin had arrived. The announcement sent Chu Qingge straight to the 18th level of hell. Leaving aside Chu Qingge, even Han Yunxi and Zhao Mama were in disbelief. Long Fei Ye's here. For real? Fake? While the three of them were still trying to figure out what to do, Long Fei Ye walked through the gates by himself. Today, he was dressed in brocade palace robes and had a jade belt around his waist. His black hair was tied up high, giving him an indescribable air of elegance. He walked towards everyone. He didn't wear any fancy clothes or ostentatious clothes, but his innate nobility and kingly demeanor gave people the impression that he was the master. It was as if the entire vast palace belonged to him. Han Yunxi's lips unconsciously curved into a happy smile, while Chu Qingge's face was burning hot. She was too ashamed to show her face. She just provoked Han Yunxi when Long Fei Yi showed up. This was a slap to her face. Why'd he come? She had once collected all sorts of information about him like a madwoman and learned all of his likes and dislikes. From what she understood, Long Fei Yi had left the palace after being named Duke of Qin. Ever since then, he detested entering the palace. Unless the Emperor or Empress Dowager summoned him, or if it was an important matter, he'd never enter the palace. Did he come just for Han Yunxi? Seeing Long Fei Yi walk towards her, Chu Qingge dearly wished that he'd walk towards her. But Long Fei Yi walked in front of Han Yunxi instead. What time is it now? Why are you still here? He asked mildly. Even his voice was low and mesmerizing. Han Yunxi didn't know what he meant, but Zhao Mama reacted quickly. To reply, Your Highness, the sedan chair arrived late. This old servant was just about to accompany esteemed Wang Fei back. By now, they should have finished their lunch and taken a nap. Actually, Long Fei-yi had gone to Han Yunxi's quarters to look for her, but found no one there. "Zhao Mama, go ask which servants carried the palanquin," Long Fei said coldly. Yes, this old servant understands. In fact, without Long Fei-yi's instructions, Zhao Mama would definitely pursue this matter. In the depths of the palace, even the Emperor and Empress Dowager couldn't manage the affairs of the concubines, let alone the servants. Granny Zhao had been working in the palace for most of her life. She had her own connections and power. As long as the masters didn't interfere, it would be easy for her to investigate this matter. Han Yunxi, accompany this prince to the palace for a meal. Long Fei-yi gave an order, not a discussion. After he finished speaking, he took Han Yunxi's hand and left. This guy was just that simple and crude. He never spoke nonsense. Han Yunxi didn't even have a chance to say a word, but she liked it. She kept up with Long Fei-yi's footsteps, but didn't forget to give Chu Qingge a smug smile. It was both a show-off and a provocation. Han Yunxi didn't say anything. Her silent smile was even more sarcastic. Chu Qingge found the sight an eyesore. She couldn't help but shout, "Your Highness Duke of Qin." How could Long Fei-yi pay any attention to her? Before Han Yunxi had appeared, this man's eyes had never rested on a woman. After Han Yunxi's appearance, his eyes had never rested on another woman. Chu Qingge wasn't satisfied and shouted again, "Your Highness Duke of Qin, esteemed Wang Fei has to investigate a case. She has to stay in the palace for the next few days." "Who said you can't leave the palace?" "Miss Chu, you can ask His Majesty to take you out to play." Han Yunxi couldn't help but speak up. Chu Qingge had been using Emperor Tianhui to show off before, so she didn't understand the true meaning behind Han Yunxi's words. She chased after her a few steps before asking angrily, "Han Yunxi, aren't you afraid that you won't be able to find out the truth?" Investigating a case was different from poisoning and treating poisons. It was much more complicated. This woman's poison skills were good, but that didn't mean she was good at investigating cases. Nothing's more important than accompanying Your Highness Duke of Qin for a meal. Han Yunxi replied with a smile. Chu Qingge had been showing off for so long, so how could she not do the same? All right, she must be overjoyed. She didn't hold back at all in front of Long Fei-yi and revealed her true nature. Long Fei-yi gave a start before looking sideways at her, only to see Han Yunxi engrossed in her battle of words with Chu Qingge. She was extremely excited. His lips curved up in a doting smile that he didn't even notice. He silently turned back and let her do as she pleased. How was Chu Qingge supposed to fight Han Yunxi now? She had nothing to say. She'd lost completely. She wanted to curse Han Yunxi for being shameless, but Han Yunxi was Long Fei-yi's official consort. It was perfectly normal for her to say such things, so what reason did she have to curse her? She wanted nothing more than to tell Long Fei-yi how much she'd adored him over the years, but her pride and upbringing prevented her from doing so. Girls needed to be reserved and self-loving. No matter how much they liked someone, they couldn't take the initiative. She'd been doing her best to show him that she wanted his attention, but Long Fei hadn't spared her a single glance from the moment he'd stepped through the door despite her and Han Yunxi's struggles. Chu Qingge stared at Long Fei-yi and Han Yunxi's retreating forms, unwilling to accept this. But just as Long Fei-yi and Han Yunxi were about to leave, Emperor Tianhui showed up. Actually, he'd left just then because Long Fei-yi had entered the palace. Because of the Northernly affair, Emperor Tianhui had summoned Long Fei-yi. He assumed that Long Fei-yi would arrive at night, but he'd arrived early. At the sight of Emperor Tianhui, Chu Qingge quickly complained, "Your Majesty, we agreed to investigate the case in 3 days, but Qin Wangfei's in such a rush to leave the palace. She must have uncovered the truth already." "Your Majesty," We agreed to investigate the case in 3 days, but we didn't say we'd be grounded for 3 days, did we? Han Yunxi retorted. She hadn't made it clear that she could leave the palace within 3 days. The decision was in Emperor Tianhui's hands, so he could say whatever he wanted. Your Majesty, we agreed on this back then, Chu Qingge emphasized. She refused to believe that Han Yunxi would be able to leave now that Emperor Tianhui was here. But Emperor Tianhui only smiled amiably. Why would I be grounded? Duke of Qin, Zhen thought you were at the Sweet Liquid Palace. As it turns out, you were leaving the palace. Did Emperor Tianhui send Chu Qingge's lunch here for nothing? He predicted that Han Yunxi would return for lunch and lunch break, which was the perfect time to spend alone time with Chu Qingge. Last night, he'd invited Duanmu Bei and Chu Tianyin to drink while hinting at Chu Qingge's marriage alliance. Neither of them had any objections. Duanmu Bei represented Western Zhou's imperial clan, while Chu Tianyin represented the Chu clan. If neither of them had any objections, then it meant that the marriage was a done deal. He didn't know that his servants had been bold enough to delay Han Yunxi's sedan chair on purpose, but it didn't matter if Han Yunxi and Long Feiyi were here. Weren't they leaving soon? Long Feiyi replied. Qin Wangfei, don't forget the 3-day deadline, Emperor Tianhui reminded her kindly. Many thanks to your Majesty for the reminder. Han Yunxi said, before giving Chu Qingge a meaningful look. Then we won't disturb you two any longer. Chu Qingge finally realized that Han Yunxi's words were off. What did she mean by that? Emperor Tianhui understood the meaning behind Han Yunxi's words as well, but Chu Qingge would be his sooner or later. He didn't mind if Han Yunxi figured it out. Han Yunxi happily left with Long Feiyi, while Zhao Mama happily went to settle accounts with the sedan chair servants. Aside from the palace guards, only Emperor Tianhui and Chu Qingge were left in Consort Yun's palace. Miss Chu wants to leave the palace as well. Emperor Tianhui asked with a smile. He was already in his 40s. Although he took good care of himself, the wrinkles at the corners of his eyes were still obvious. His kind smile reminded Chu Qingge of her father. Chu Qingge was busy investigating the case, so how could she really want to leave the palace? No, Qingge still has to investigate, she replied simply before walking towards a side hall in disappointment. Emperor Tianhui followed her in and signaled for all the servants to withdraw with a look. Chu Qingge immediately sensed that something was off. Your Majesty, what's this? She asked cautiously. Miss Chu, what did you find out about Consort Yun's case? Tell Zhen all about it, Emperor Tianhui grinned. When he wasn't so serious, he had the air of a scholar. It wasn't that Chu Qingge wasn't on guard, but that she'd never considered the possibility. She assumed that Emperor Tianhui had other ideas about Consort Yun's case. Emperor Tianhui sat down and gestured for her to do the same. But as soon as Chu Qingge sat down, Emperor Tianhui suddenly took her hand in his. Alarmed, Chu Qingge shrank back and pushed him away. Your Majesty, you. She finally understood what was going on. Emperor Tianhui actually, no. Her hair stood on end at the thought. Emperor Tianhui was old enough to be her father. Emperor Tianhui had more or less predicted that Chu Qingge would react this way. Since he'd taken a liking to this woman, he'd naturally investigated her thoroughly. This woman had a cold personality and had no lack of suitors, but none of them had ever caught her eye. Emperor Tianhui muttered to himself, near Qingming. Spirits on the branches of the jade birds. It's a pity that all my songs have gone to waste at dusk. Qingge, Qingge. Emperor Tianhui sighed with emotion as he rose to his feet and walked towards Chu Qingge. Qingge, how about you leave your love songs in Zhen's heart? What a poetic confession, but Chu Qingge's entire body turned cold. She unconsciously reached for the bow on her back, but weapons weren't allowed in the palace. She'd left her bow outside. Her entire body trembled as she backed away step by step. She didn't even know how to answer Emperor Tianhui's question. She didn't want it. She backed into a chair and fell on her butt. "Your Majesty, where's my big brother? Where's Crown Prince Yi? I want to see them. I want to leave the palace and see them." She was on the verge of tears. She couldn't accept Emperor Tianhui's sudden display of affection. Fortunately, Emperor Tianhui didn't press any closer. Faced with Chu Qingge's pale face and speechless face, he only took 2 steps forward before stopping. "It looks like Miss Chu needs time to think things over. Zhen will give you 2 days to finish investigating Consort Yun's case before Zhen comes looking for you." Emperor Tianhui might be lustful, but he wouldn't force things. After all, Chu Qingge's birth was obvious. Still, he was confident that Chu Qingge wouldn't be able to escape from his grasp. As soon as he left Consort Yun's palace, he murmured to eunuch Luo, "Summon Qin Wang Rong to the palace. Zhen has important matters to attend to." Despite his lust, Emperor Tianhui hadn't forgotten about Long Fei Ye's threats. He'd just finished discussing Northernly with the Long Fei Yi when he summoned Qin Wang Rong. They were still investigating Long Fei Ye's origins. Over the past few days, Emperor Tianhui had been pressuring General Mu's estate to take full control of the infantry forces. It was a long time after Emperor Tianhui left that Chu Qingge recovered from her shock and fear. She recalled Han Yunxi's parting words and was so angry that she could smell blood. If she knew this would happen, she wouldn't have investigated Consort Yun's case at all. She wouldn't have come to Tianning at all. What was she supposed to do? She couldn't help but wonder what Long Fei Yi and Han Yunxi were doing right now. Finally, tears streamed down her face. Chapter 330. What were Long Fei Yi and Han Yunxi doing now? Long Fei Yi didn't bring Han Yunxi back to the Duke of Qin's estate for dinner, but to a famous tea-house in the capital for refreshments. The second floor of the tea-house was a place for storytelling. Long Fei Yi and Han Yunxi sat in a booth by the window, separated from the main hall by a beaded curtain. They could hear the storytelling while maintaining privacy. Long Fei Yi liked to drink tea. That was the only thing Han Yunxi knew about his preferences. He ordered a pot of black tea and handed the menu to Han Yunxi. Was this guy very free today? He actually had time to ask her out for tea. Regardless of whether he was free or not, Han Yunxi was very happy. She skimmed through the menu and asked, "What would your highness like to eat?" "You decide." Long Fei Yi only had requirements for tea. Han Yunxi chose a few things she liked, then asked, "What would your highness like to eat?" "You decide." "You don't need to ask in the future," Long Fei Yi said mildly. In the future? Was he going to ask her out for tea often in the future? Oh. Han Yunxi was in a very good mood. Han Yunxi was hungry, so she ordered a table full of pastries. Most of them were sweets, because she liked sweets. "Your highness was looking for me, for something." All right, Han Yunxi knew her limits. This busy man wasn't Gu, so why would he ask her out for tea for no reason? "I just happened to go to the palace to talk about the coup in Northernly with Tianhui, so I came to see you while I was at it," Long Fei Yi said honestly. "Actually, you could have lied," Han Yunxi muttered to herself. Unexpectedly, Long Fei Yi heard her and looked towards Han Yunxi with a strange expression. Han Yunxi immediately shut her mouth and averted her gaze, not daring to look at him. Long Fei Yi stared at her for a long time without speaking. Han Yunxi felt very awkward as she tried to guess at Long Fei Yi's current expression and what he was thinking. They'd agreed to take 99 steps, but when she thought about it seriously, she realized that even taking a single step was so difficult. Actually, if Han Yunxi was brave enough to turn around and look, she would definitely see Long Fei Ye's teasing smile. He didn't seem to be angry. In fact, he liked seeing her embarrassed. She was used to the silence between the two of them, but under these circumstances, Han Yunxi couldn't sit still. Han Yunxi pretended that nothing had happened and changed the topic. Has there been a coup in Northern Li? Did Zhu Nixia fall from power? She and Long Feiyi had not only exposed Zhu Nixia and Duan Muyao's collusion in Medical City, but also revealed that Zhu Nixia was the head of the 100 Poison sect. Duan Muyao was forced to hide in Tianshan Kenzhou, too afraid to return to Western Zhou. Zhu Nixia's troubles were the biggest. His identity as the head of the 100 Poison sect had caused a huge uproar in Northern Li's imperial clan, and the 100 Poison sect had attracted the attention of Medical City's higher-ups because of the coup. Lately, Zhu Nixia had been burning a candle at both ends. He could only care about his head and not his feet. There's news that Zhu Nixia's power has been taken away by the Northern Dynasty's emperors. It's uncertain whether it's true or not, Long Feiyi replied mildly. Han Yunxi finally dared to look over, only to see Long Feiyi's innately cold face. The situation in Northern Li was unclear and unpredictable, but one thing was for sure. Once Northern Li stabilized, Tianning and Western Zhou would become restless. On the other hand, internal strife in Northern Li would give Tianning and Western Zhou a chance to strengthen themselves. The three-way battlefield, where the three countries intersected, had small skirmishes that kept Tianning and Western Zhou on edge. It doesn't matter if it's true or not, he's in big trouble. Han Yunxi said hatefully. When she recalled Zhu Nixia's humiliation, she felt a lingering fear in her heart. Fortunately, the white-robed man had arrived in time. Of course, lingering fear was only lingering fear. She wasn't that weak and could still face it. She swore to herself that she wouldn't let Zhu Nixia off. Of course, aside from the two major problems, Zhu Nixia also had to deal with the poison in his shoulder. This was a new poison that Han Yunxi had created. It was a chronic rheumatic poison that wasn't fatal, but could torment Zhu Nixia for the rest of his life. Every time it rained or cloudy, Zhu Nixia's shoulder would be in incomparable pain. No matter what he did, he couldn't relieve the pain. He could only endure it or cut off his arm. Han Yunxi had only created a single antidote, and she had long thrown it away. From then on, she would never create another antidote or use this poison again. She wanted the entire world to never have an antidote again. Although Han Yunxi hated him in her heart, Long Feiyi could still sense her expression. "What's wrong?" he asked. "Nothing, I just really hate that person." Han Yunxi didn't want Long Feiyi to know about that unpleasant memory. When she told Long Feiyi about the white-clothed gentleman saving her, she directly skipped over this matter. Zhu Nixia was placed in an important position by the Northern Dynasty's emperors, so he won't fall so easily. Long Feiyi said indifferently. Zhu Nixia wasn't a member of the imperial family. He was only the adopted son of the Northern Dynasty's emperors, but he was so powerful that there must be a reason behind it. Han Yunxi didn't understand the current situation in Northern Li, so she didn't think too deeply about it. She just let out a disappointed "oh." She didn't know that the first thing Long Feiyi did after returning from Medicine City was to send people to Northern Li. Long before Zhu Nixia kidnapped Han Yunxi in the sky pit, he had already warned Zhu Nixia. "Zhu Nixia, your lordship will make you regret this." There were many things that Han Yunxi would never know if Long Feiyi didn't tell her. Han Yunxi didn't want to talk about Zhu Nixia, so she smiled and said, "Your Highness, aren't you afraid that I won't be able to find out the truth and lose to Chuqinga?" Long Feiyi was a little lost. He hadn't cared about the case at all. If noble consort Xiao didn't have the ability to solve this problem herself, then there was no point in keeping her in the palace. As Andrew had said, he never raised useless people. Why should I be afraid? Long Fei Yi didn't understand. Han Yunxi was amused, her face full of gossip. Your Highness, can't you tell that His Majesty has taken a fancy to Chu Qingge? Long Fei Yi was very intelligent, wise and far-sighted, but sometimes he really couldn't understand this woman's logic. What does that have to do with whether you win or lose? Long Fei Yi asked seriously. If Andrew and the rest were here, they'd be surprised that Long Fei Yi seemed to be talking too much today. Your Highness, if I make Chu Qingge lose miserably, then maybe Emperor Tianhui won't be so infatuated with her. Actually, Han Yunxi was more than happy to see Chu Qingge marry Emperor Tianhui, even if she set aside all the complicated conflicts between them. Still, she was still rational. Once Chu Qingge married into Tianning's imperial clan, she'd be a noble consort at the very least. Wouldn't she come looking for trouble every day then? Moreover, Chu Qingge has the backing of a great general from Western Zhou behind her. Chu Qingge was different from Duan Muyao. Although Duan Muyao's status was higher than Chu Qingge's, it was only an empty title. Otherwise, Emperor Tianhui wouldn't have tried so hard to match her with Long Fei Yi. Chu Qingge's own archery skills were excellent, but she had the backing of an entire army from Western Zhou behind her. In a struggle for power, nothing could compare to actual military strength. Once Chu Qingge married Emperor Tianhui, he'd have another bargaining chip to suppress Long Fei Yi. In any case, Chu Qingge's marriage would only bring them more harm than good. Han Yunxi's analysis was very serious. Long Fei Yi listened while drinking tea. When Han Yunxi finally finished, he said, "It doesn't matter if you lose, but your lordship likes it when you win." Han Yunxi was stunned. She suddenly felt like she was overthinking things and worrying over nothing. Does this guy even look down on Western Zhou's Chu clan? Just how strong is he? Just how much strength is he hiding? Long Fei Yi finished his tea and rose to his feet. Are we going back? Actually, they'd been sitting for a long time and had talked a lot, but Han Yunxi felt like they'd only sat for a little while. She felt like she had so many things to tell this guy, but she didn't know what else to say. Despite her reluctance, she rose to her feet and said, "I want to go to General Bailey's estate." It had been days since she'd visited Bailey Mingxiang, so she didn't know how she was doing. Taking medicine so often meant that the poison would flare up more often. "Let's go, your lordship wants to go as well," Long Fei Yi intoned. Han Yunxi originally thought that Long Fei Yi was going to visit Bailey Mingxiang, but who knew that when they arrived at General Bailey's estate, Long Fei Yi would have a secret meeting with General Bailey. When Han Yunxi arrived at Bailey Mingxiang's room, Bailey Mingxiang's poison had just ended. Bailey Mingxiang had cleaned herself up and was resting on the chaise lounge. Her small face was so pale that it was devoid of color. Bailey Mingxiang chatted with Han Yunxi for a long time before she casually asked, "I heard from the servants that His Highness is here." "And he's in your father's study," Han Yunxi replied as she took Bailey Mingxiang's pulse. In Bailey Mingxiang's entire year, she'd only seen His Highness from afar at the Empress Dowager's birthday banquet. How she wished that there would be more banquets in the palace. Bailey Mingxiang hid everything deep in her heart and didn't ask any more questions. Instead, it was Han Yunxi who asked her, "Miss Bailey, was His Highness's temperament like this when he was young?" "Mingxiang rarely saw His Highness, but I heard that it was like this." Bailey Mingxiang's answer was very cautious. "I feel that he's a bit depressed." Han Yunxi would only say something like this to Bailey Mingxiang. Bailey Mingxiang didn't even say anything to Zhao Mama. Who knew if Zhao Mama would spread the news to Long Fei Ye's ears if she found out? In her impression, Bailey Mingxiang was just one of Long Fei's subordinates. She was just like his guards, respectful and obedient to his orders. In reality, Bailey Mingxiang was indeed like this. Depressed, Bailey Mingxiang muttered to herself. She didn't expect that Han Yunxi would be able to see Long Fei Ye's depressed side. Bailey Mingxiang really wanted to say that she didn't understand, but she couldn't help but think of the scene by the lotus pond many years ago. That youth with cold eyes and heavy brows. She sighed softly. Esteemed Wang Fei, how can someone who has the world in his heart be carefree and unrestrained? That's right, Long Fei Yi had the world in his heart. It was a world that was even bigger than what she could imagine. Han Yunxi smiled. Miss Bailey, you really do understand him. Han Yunxi was just casually saying this, but Bailey Mingxiang's heart skipped a beat. She hurriedly said, Esteemed Wang Fei, Mingxiang can't bear your words. His Highness's thoughts aren't something that can be casually guessed. Bailey Mingxiang, Bailey Mingxiang, you love Long Fei Yi to the point that it's in your blood. You love Long Fei Yi so much that even Han Yunxi can't see it. Bailey Mingxiang was panicking when a maidservant's voice came from outside the door. Esteemed Wang Fei, His Highness is waiting for you in the guest hall. He wants you to go over when you're done. Chapter 331. Long Fei Yi still had matters to attend to, so Han Yunxi didn't dare delay. She left a few words with Bailey Mingxiang before leaving. However, she didn't know that Bailey Mingxiang had followed her as soon as she arrived at the guest hall and was waiting by the wall outside. Not long after, she saw His Highness and Han Yunxi come out one after the other. As soon as they reached the door, His Highness took Han Yunxi's hand. She knew that His Highness treated Han Yunxi special, but she never expected it to be like this. The action of holding hands was so natural, as if they'd been used to it for many years. Your Highness, from the moment I saw you, I thought you wouldn't fall in love with anyone. Bitterness welled up in Bailey Mingxiang's heart, but her smile was still as gentle as ever. She smiled as she watched the person she'd been thinking about for more than 10 years disappear into the distance. Even when she couldn't see him anymore, she still stubbornly watched. Xiang, why are you doing this? Suddenly, an unhappy voice came from behind her. Bailey Mingxiang jumped in fright. She turned around and saw that the person standing behind her was none other than her father, Bailey Yuanlong. Father, I just came over. Has His Highness and the others left? She pretended to be calm as she asked indifferently. You're still pretending in front of your father. Bailey Yuanlong reprimanded unhappily. Father, Mingxiang doesn't know what you're talking about. Bailey Mingxiang was at a loss. You and His Highness, you. Girl, you should understand your status. Bailey Yuanlong's tone softened. Father, don't worry. Mingxiang has always understood my status and mission. Mingxiang definitely won't disappoint you and His Highness. Bailey Mingxiang's tone was so resolute that Bailey Yuanlong wondered if he'd seen wrong. Bailey Yuanlong couldn't say anything else and could only leave. As soon as he left, Bailey Mingxiang recovered from her grief. She almost ran to the door, hoping to take one more look. She really wasn't sure if she'd be able to see His Highness again before the beauty's blood matured. Unfortunately, when she arrived, Long Fei Ye's carriage had already left. In the carriage, Han Yunxi was conflicted for a moment before she asked pitifully, Your Highness, I want to go home. Can you send me home? Although Emperor Tianhui and the Empress Dowager didn't forbid them from leaving the palace, the Empress Dowager had arranged living quarters for her and Chu Qingge. It was obvious that she wanted them to stay in the palace for the next 3 days. If she did not want to live in the palace, she could only ask Long Fei Yi to help her settle it. Long Fei Yi looked at her expressionlessly and didn't say anything. Han Yunxi waited for a while. Seeing that Long Fei Yi didn't respond, she could only lower her eyes resentfully. Before long, Han Yunxi raised her head again. Your Highness, I don't want to return to the palace. However, Long Fei Yi still ignored her. This time, Han Yunxi was thoroughly listless. At a time like this, it'd be better if she didn't cause him any more trouble. But when the carriage stopped and Han Yunxi got off, she didn't see the palace gates, but the familiar Duke of Qin's estate. Han Yunxi was both surprised and delighted. She didn't know what to say, but could only smile foolishly. Long Fei Ye's face was as cold as ice. Icily, he said, "Is it that funny? Why aren't you going inside?" Oh. Han Yunxi might not be smiling anymore, but her happiness was written all over her face. After making sure Han Yunxi was inside, Long Fei turned around and couldn't help but break into a soundless laugh. Han Yunxi didn't enter the palace until the morning of the third day. Neither the Empress Dowager nor Emperor Tianhui pursued the matter. Heaven knows how Chu Qingge had spent the past 3 days. As soon as she saw Han Yunxi, her gaze was enough to kill someone. "Miss Chu, have you found the murderer?" Han Yunxi asked with a grin. Although there was still a day left, Han Yunxi didn't want to waste it. If Long Fei Yi hadn't shown up the day before yesterday, she would have told the truth long ago. She could see through a small case like noble Consort Yun at a glance. Chu Qingge hadn't overestimated herself, but underestimated her. Chu Qingge had already found out everything about noble Consort Yun's palace. She already had proof that noble consort Xiao had been framed, so she needed to find out who did it. Although Emperor Tianhui had scared her out of her wits, Chu Qingge still maintained her haughty, lofty, and cold demeanor before Han Yunxi. "Esteemed Wang Fei, took you so long to come back. You must have found out the truth long ago, right? Why don't we find the Empress Dowager and Emperor so they can hear you tell them how noble Consort Yun died?" Chu Qingge smiled mockingly. But Han Yunxi simply replied, "All right. Go invite them." "You." Chu Qingge was frightened. "Han Yunxi, don't joke with me." "Who's joking with you?" "Someone come, invite the Empress Dowager and Emperor over. Just say that this Wang Fei's already found the true culprit behind the poisoning." Han Yunxi said loudly. Chu Qingge shook her head in disbelief. It wasn't until the Empress Dowager and Emperor Tianhui arrived that she realized it was all true. "Yunxi, I knew you had the skills." The Empress Dowager was as kind as ever, but only towards Han Yunxi, not Chu Qingge. Chu Qingge was so nauseous that she couldn't think straight. Tianning's Empress Dowager clearly disliked Han Yunxi, so she should be on her side. Emperor Tianhui was on her side, but she didn't even dare to look at him right now, much less show off in front of him. All she could do was remain silent. She only wanted to see what kind of truth Han Yunxi could give them. Could she really find out in a single day? Han Yunxi truly didn't like any of the people in front of her. She was in a hurry to get things done so she could leave the palace for business. She took out the poison she'd found in noble consort Zhao's palace. "This is a red snow pole. Only the entire bottle is lethal. Noble consort Xiao only has half a bottle. First, noble consort Xiao wouldn't be stupid enough to keep the poison on her body after poisoning her. Second, noble consort Yun wouldn't have died if only half a bottle was used. This was a court lady framing her. She didn't know anything about poisons, so she wasn't the one who poisoned her." "Nonsense." Chu Qingge laughed coldly. She'd said the same thing on the first day. Noble consort Zhao's court lady, Bao Zhu, had taken out the poison. Bao Zhu had confessed that noble consort Xiao had ordered her to poison her. Judging from the half bottle, Bao Zhu was lying. Han Yunxi ignored Chu Qingge and continued to speak. Judging from noble consort Yun's corpse, she was poisoned with the entire bottle's worth of poison. That's not much. In other words, there's still half a bottle of poison missing. Chu Qingge laughed coldly again at her words. She'd found that out long ago as well. She'd been searching for the other half of the bottle for the past 2 days. Han Yunxi still ignored her and continued. Why is there only half a bottle in noble consort Zhao's place? Where did the other half go? I expect you've already found it, Chu Qingge asked. She refused to believe that Han Yunxi could find the other half of the bottle in a single day. Leaving aside the fact that the other half might have been destroyed, even if it was still there, it'd take a long time to find it. I found it. It's in Li Changzai's palace. Of course, I'll have to go take a look to find out where it is, Han Yunxi replied seriously. Everyone was stunned by the sudden mention of someone they didn't want to do. Only the Empress Dowager remained calm. Coldly, she ordered, someone come, search Li Changzai's flying cloud courtyard. Soon enough, they really did find half a bottle of red snow pole in Li Changzai's soaring cloud courtyard. Chu Qingge couldn't believe it and almost asked Han Yunxi how she knew. But for the sake of saving face, she held back. Once the bottle was found, Li Changzai was brought before the Empress Dowager. She cried out, Esteemed Empress Dowager, Your Majesty, Qinxia doesn't know a thing. If Qinxia knew poisons, I wouldn't have left only half a bottle in the palace. Qinxia and noble consort Xiao are both wrongly accused. Wrongly accused. Each and every one of you has the gall to do something like this right under my nose. Do you all want to die? The Empress Dowager scolded. At this moment, Court Lady Baozhu suddenly started crying. Esteemed Empress Dowager, spare me, spare me. This servant will confess everything. It was Li Changzai who told this servant to frame noble consort Xiao. This servant was afraid that she'd bite me back, so I secretly left half a bottle in her palace. This servant is the one who doesn't know anything about poisons. This servant didn't poison her, it was Li Changzai who did. Chu Qingge was stunned by her words. She never thought things would turn out like this. She was even wondering why Li Changzai only had half a bottle in the palace. Han Yunxi only smiled coldly. She could see through everything. She knew that the true culprit behind the scenes was the Empress Dowager, while Li Changzai was nothing more than an innocent scapegoat. The Empress Dowager had done countless framing schemes in her life. She was an old hand at it, a crafty one at that. She'd circled the case around once more. She'd bribed both Li Changzai and Court Lady Baozhu to leave the other half of the bottle in Li Changzai's hands. Without a doubt, she'd left a backup plan to prevent anyone from investigating the case. As luck would have it, Chu Qingge and Han Yunxi had arrived to investigate. Even if they found out that Li Changzai hadn't framed noble consort Xiao, they'd at least get rid of the favored noble consort Yun. The Empress Dowager would still reap some benefits. Han Yunxi originally wanted to walk around and find the whereabouts of the other half of the bottle of poison. Unfortunately, Soaring Cloud's courtyard was between her residence and noble consort Yun's palace. She was all too familiar with the red snow pole, so the detox system could detect it even from a long distance away. When she passed by Soaring Cloud's courtyard, the detox system had already warned her. Now was the time for real evidence and witnesses. The Empress Dowager couldn't find any clues at all. Moreover, Li Changzai and Baozhu would never betray the Empress Dowager, nor would they dare. Everything had been done flawlessly. It wasn't that Han Yunxi didn't want to investigate, but that she couldn't find any evidence. This was the terror of the imperial harem. Very well, a trifling Changzai and court lady actually dared to frame noble consort Yun. You've got guts. Someone come, take them away and give each of them 30 floggings. The Empress Dowager raged. Li Changzai and Baozhu were naturally begging for mercy, but it was all an act. Soon enough, they vanished without a trace. Han Yunxi stared at the empty doorway and only felt that the imperial harem was a bottomless pit that ate people alive. Esteemed Empress Dowager, Your Majesty, since the truth of the case has come to light, then Yunxi will take her leave. The Empress Dowager was very satisfied and wanted Han Yunxi to leave as soon as possible. Meanwhile, Emperor Tianhui had no interest in the case to begin with. No matter how favored noble consort Yun was, she couldn't compare to the newbie Xiao. Han Yunxi left first, leaving Chu Qingge stunned in place. She had no idea how Han Yunxi had discovered the poison. She finally realized how formidable Han Yunxi's poison skills were. Your Majesty, I've lost. It was rare for the icy beauty to admit defeat. But Emperor Tianhui didn't mind. Victory and defeat are commonplace in war. Miss Chu shouldn't be unhappy. Have you considered the matter from yesterday? Chapter 332. If this was any other time, Emperor Tianhui's victory and defeat are commonplace in war, would have comforted Chu Qingge greatly. But now she couldn't help but feel a chill run through her body as she backed up a few steps. Fortunately, the Empress Dowager was still here. Otherwise, she wouldn't know what to do. She had no weapons in her hands, and this was Tianning's imperial palace. As long as Emperor Tianhui wanted to keep her here, it'd be impossible for her to leave. Miss Chu, have you thought things over clearly from last time? Emperor Tianhui asked, seemingly unconcerned by the Empress Dowager's presence. A mother knew her son best, so the Empress Dowager could guess Emperor Tianhui's intentions. She should have left, but she didn't. She'd like to see how Chu Qingge would answer. I'm indebted to your Majesty's misplaced love. Qingge already has someone in her heart, Chu Qingge refused politely. She swore that she'd never set foot in the palace again. She didn't want to see Emperor Tianhui ever again, because the shadow in her heart was too great. Emperor Tianhui seemed to be very confident in himself. His eyes flashed with displeasure, but he didn't show it. It looks like Zhen was a step too late, he said with an open-minded smile. Chu Qingge lowered her head and didn't reply. Emperor Tianhui studied Chu Qingge for a long time before saying, "Someone come, escort Miss Chu out of the palace." Chu Qingge was surprised by his words. She never expected Emperor Tianhui to be so easy to deal with. She felt like a weight had been lifted off her shoulders, but she didn't have time to think. Many thanks to your Majesty. After bidding farewell to the Empress Dowager and Emperor Tianhui, Chu Qingge left, wishing she could fly out of this terrifying place. The Empress Dowager stared at her retreating figure from a distance, a cold smile rising to her lips. No wonder this Miss Chu lost to Han Yunxi. So she was such a brainless woman. How could Emperor Tianhui let her off so easily? Duanmu Bei and Chu Tianyin had long sold her out. How could such a stupid woman fight against her? But not long after Chu Qingge entered the palace as an imperial concubine, the Empress Dowager realized she was the stupid one. Emperor, since the truth of the case has come to light, it's time to bury noble consort Yun, the Empress Dowager said carelessly. No one knew the truth behind noble consort Yun's death better than Emperor Tianhui. He knew why the Empress Dowager wanted to promote noble consort Shui, too. Mu Fei can handle it, Emperor Tianhui seemed indifferent as well. Then he left. As soon as Chu Qingge left the palace, she went back to her quarters and started pounding on Chu Tianyin's door. At this time, Chu Tianyin and Duanmu Bei were discussing something in the room. As soon as the door opened, Chu Qingge whimpered and hugged Chu Tianyin. Sob sob, big brother, sob sob. Chu Tianyin pushed her away. Although they were siblings, he was not used to such intimate contact. What's wrong with you? Did you lose? Chu Qingge sniffled and prepared to speak, but stopped when she saw Duanmu Bei's presence. Duanmu Bei's eyes flashed with coldness. He smiled and said, Qingge, a loss is a loss. It's no big deal. Let me tell you some good news. Do you want to hear it? Chu Qingge wanted to tell Chu Tianyin about what had happened in the palace, but with Duanmu Bei around, she could only endure. She had always been cold and aloof, so how could she easily shed tears in front of outsiders? She wiped her face and quickly regained her composure. Your Highness, if you have any good news, please tell me to be happy. I must congratulate you. Duanmu Bei laughed. Congratulate? What do you mean? Chu Qingge didn't understand. Tianyin, it's better if you say it, he. Duanmu Bei was in a very good mood. He had been ordered to explain and apologize for Duanmu Yao's actions. He assumed that Emperor Tianhui would make things difficult for him, but everything had gone smoothly thanks to Chu Qingge. Big brother, what's the good news? Chu Qingge asked curiously. His Majesty has already decreed that you should marry Emperor Tianhui through a marriage alliance. Tomorrow, we'll set out for Western Zhou to prepare for the marriage alliance. Compared to Duanmu Bei's excitement, Chu Tianyin was much calmer. Chu Qingge gave a start at these words before she gave Chu Tianyin a shove. You guys sold me out. She cried. She felt like a complete idiot. No wonder Emperor Tianhui had let her out of the palace so easily. So everything had already been arranged. Everything was set in stone. Western Zhou's emperor had already decreed her marriage alliance, but Emperor Tianhui still asked her such a question. What did he mean by that? Chu Qingge was not only disgusted, but terrified. Chu Tianyin didn't speak, but Chu Qingge gave him another shove, narrowly missing him. Are you still my big brother? Now Duanmu Bei was unhappy. Coldly, he said, Chu Qingge, you're being impudent. These are His Majesty's orders. Are you saying that he sold you out? There are plenty of people who want to marry into Tianning. Don't be ignorant of your good fortune. Then you guys should find someone else. Why me? Chu Qingge roared, her face ashen and eyes red. She was in a terrible state. Impudence. What kind of attitude is this? Duanmu Bei slapped the table and rose to his feet. Although he was on good terms with the Chu siblings, that didn't mean they could treat him with disrespect. Chu Qingge was about to lose her temper when Chu Tianyin stopped her. Qingge, this is father's wish as well. The Chu clan will be proud of you. In a flash, Chu Qingge froze. Chu Tianyin's words were like a basin of ice water that drenched her from head to toe, freezing her from head to toe. She couldn't help but tremble. Ever since they were children, she and her big brother had never disobeyed their father's wishes. They'd never even had the right to question their father's wishes. All they could do was obey. Obey. Seeing Chu Qingge's reaction, Duanmu Bei laughed coldly. What, even His Majesty's orders can't compare to Great General Chu's? I wouldn't dare. Chu Tianyin hastened to explain. Your Highness Crown Prince, will set out for Western Zhou tomorrow. Everything will be done according to His Majesty and Emperor Tianhui's wishes. As he spoke, he gave Duanmu Bei a meaningful look. Duanmu Bei immediately recalled the treasure trove and the poisoned sect's forbidden grounds and stopped arguing with Chu Qingge. Then that's good. Have her prepare well. Duanmu Bei had already left, but Chu Qingge was still frozen in place. Her eyes were empty and filled with despair. Chu Tianyin ignored her and went to pack up their luggage. After a long time, Chu Qingge finally spoke up, her voice choked with sobs. Big brother, is father angry because I didn't listen to his words and provoked Han Yunxi? Chu Tianyin paused for a long time before he replied, I don't know. But don't worry, I'll always stay in the capital with you even after you marry over. No matter how stupid Chu Qingge was, she could still smell a conspiracy. Big brother, just what are you and father planning? If you have any questions, you can ask father yourself when you get back. Chu Tianyin looked like a gentle older brother, but he was ruthless to the extreme. Go pack up. We'll leave tomorrow. After he was done, he ignored Chu Qingge and left the room to instruct his attendants. Keep an eye on the young miss. If she escapes, you'll be the ones to blame. Han Yinshi was in a great mood after winning against Chu Qingge. She was about to leave the palace when she turned around and headed for the Imperial Physician Courtyard. With her part-time job as an Imperial Physician, the Imperial Physician Courtyard had become her free medicine warehouse. She was actually quite grateful to Emperor Tianhui. She assumed that Gu Beiyue was still in the courtyard, but nobody knew where he'd gone after asking around. Han Yinshi left after getting her medicine. She had no idea that Lil Thing had snuck in at the same time she left the Imperial Physician Courtyard. After its experience at the Medical Materials Association, Lil Thing was especially cautious. Fortunately, the Imperial Physician Courtyard was large enough that there were multiple doors. Few people had time to stare at the floor. After entering, Lil Thing sniffed around before heading straight for the Imperial Pharmacy behind the Imperial Physician Courtyard. Don't assume that it was here to steal medicine. As gluttonous as it was, it actually hurried through the pharmacy without even looking at the ingredients. In the end, it stopped in front of a small room in the back courtyard. The air was filled with the fragrance of herbs. However, it could still easily distinguish the unique scent from the herbal fragrance that filled the courtyard. It was a faint herbal fragrance, with a hint of vanilla. Only people who'd been taking medicine since childhood would have such a scent. Only a nose as sensitive as Lil Thing's could sniff it out. It stood up with its head held high, thoroughly enjoying the scent in the air. Its large tail swayed back and forth as it reveled in the scent. It really liked this scent. If it could die in this scent, what a happy thing it'd be. As it sniffed, it couldn't help but start dancing, spinning in circles on one paw as if lost in a beautiful dream. Suddenly, there was a creak as the door opened. Lil Thing gave a start before dodging to the side. The person who came out was none other than the head Imperial Physician, Gu Beiyue. Chi. Lil Thing was so happy that it kept making noises. Gu Beiyue looked back and was surprised to see Lil Thing. How did it find its way here? When Lil Thing saw Gu Beiyue looking at it, it grew even happier and scurried onto his shoulder. Chi. It didn't know what to say, but after a few squeaks, it jumped down and scuttled back into the room. Gu Beiyue's gentle eyes flashed with curiosity as he followed it in. Who knew that when Lil Thing saw him enter, it actually stood still by the door. Gu Beiyue squatted down and gently asked, Lil Thing, what's wrong? Lil Thing looked at him and scratched at the door. Gu Beiyue didn't understand and gently stroked its little head. What are you trying to do? I don't understand. Lil Thing wanted to close the door, but it couldn't push it. It wished it could return to its original form so that it could push the door down with just a slap. However, it didn't want to change. Its original form was too fat and not cute at all. It became anxious and used its small body to push the door. Lil Thing, you want to close the door, right? Gu Beiyue finally understood. He laughed as he scooped it up in his hand and closed the door. Lil Thing sat in his palm and looked at his smile in a daze. How could there be a man who smiled so gently? It was like the spring breeze in April, blowing into one's heart. After closing the door, Gu Beiyue found a place to sit down and asked seriously, Lil Thing, why did you come looking for me? That's right, why did Lil Thing suddenly come looking for Gu Beiyue? Chapter 333. Why was Little Thing looking for Gu Beiyue? Little Thing did not understand what Gu Beiyue was saying, but it was listening very seriously. Little Thing liked gentle voices. Gu Beiyue used his finger to scratch Little Thing's chin, teasing it. Little Thing immediately giggled. Of course, being happy was just being happy, but it would not forget the important things. Very quickly, Little Thing jumped down from Gu Beiyue's palm. It landed on the ground, opened its mouth, and spat out a huge luminous pearl. Seeing this, the calm Gu Beiyue was shocked. Luminous pearl. Wasn't this the treasure that Qin Wang Rong gave to the Empress Dowager as a gift? One must know that the Empress Dowager had thrown a tantrum several times over the missing items, causing the entire harem to be on tenterhooks. Who would have thought that Little Thing was the one who stole it? But why did it spit out the luminous pearl in front of him? Gu Beiyue was puzzled, but who knew that Little Thing would spit out 4 more treasures? They were the blood lingji that the Crown Prince gave to the Empress Dowager, the 1,000-year-old fleece flower that the Minister of Personnel, Lord Su, gave as a tribute, the purple summer flower that Marquis Ping Nan gave, and the 100-year-old scorpion tail that General Ning asked someone to give. Apart from the luminous pearl, these 4 herbs were the most precious among the Empress Dowager's birthday gifts. Little Thing was worthy of being a poisonous beast, it really knew what was good for it. These things that the Empress Dowager had been frantically looking for suddenly appeared in the palace. If it was anyone else, they would be nervous. However, other than being curious, Gu Beiyue was still calm and collected. He picked up the treasures and carefully examined them. Although they were spat out from Little Thing's mouth, they were all very clean. Little Thing jumped up and waved its claws at Gu Beiyue, as if it was asking for credit. Gu Beiyue helplessly smiled. Little Thing, are these for me? I'm not your master. Who knew that Little Thing would suddenly spit out a purple walnut into Gu Beiyue's palm? Ji. It barked at him a few times, then quietly retreated to the side and sat down. The purple walnut was a very common medicine. Compared to a pile of treasures, it was negligible. However, it was precisely this thing that shocked Gu Beiyue. Blood lingji, 1,000-year fleece flower root, 100-year scorpion tail, purple summer flower, moon night pearl powder, and the most common purple walnut. It was the best and fastest way to treat a great injury to one's vitality. Even a 6th-grade divine doctor might not know about this prescription, but a 5th-grade divine doctor like Gu Beiyue was very clear about it. His medical skills were far beyond the 5th grade, and his familiarity with medicinal herbs was far beyond what he had shown. He looked at Little Thing with great interest. His slightly pale face seemed to be smiling yet not smiling, and there was a hint of wickedness in his gentleness. He was especially charming, and Little Thing was mesmerized by him. I really like this young master. What to do? The Little Thing was embarrassed by his stare and lowered its head shyly. Gu Beiyue chuckled. Hee, Little Thing, so you really do recognize me. Little Thing didn't understand what Gu Beiyue was saying, but it knew that Gu Beiyue understood why it had given him such a large pile of things. It quickly hopped over and landed on a pile of medicinal herbs. It stepped here and there, urging Gu Beiyue to quickly boil the medicine and drink it. Gu Beiyue kept the medicinal herbs into the cabinet at the side, but Little Thing still wasn't willing. Before Gu Beiyue closed the cabinet door, it hurriedly scurried over and bit out all the medicinal herbs, throwing them to the side of the medicine stove. Gu Beiyue helplessly smiled. I understand. Little Thing wanted him to immediately boil the medicine and drink it. Indeed, leaving these things anywhere in the palace wouldn't be as safe as leaving them in his stomach. This small room was where Gu Beiyue usually rested. There was everything in the room. He quickly washed the medicinal herbs clean and was about to bring the night moon pearl over. Who knew that Little Thing had already silently crushed the night moon pearl and brought the innermost and most essential pearl powder to Gu Beiyue. The rest of the pearl powder was naturally eaten by Little Thing. You know better than your master, hee. Gu Beiyue smiled very gently. Just like this, under Little Thing's supervision, Gu Beiyue used several kinds of precious medicinal herbs and the night moon pearl powder to boil a small bowl of tonic medicine. He drank it all under Lil Thing's urging. Lil Thing originally wanted to stay a little longer, but it was helpless. Not long after Gu Beiyue finished drinking the medicine, someone came looking for him outside. He gently stroked Lil Thing's head with a smile. "Thanks, Lil Thing." Lil Thing rubbed against his warm fingers, reluctant to part with him, but quickly escaped through the window. If it stayed out for too long, Mama Yunxi would worry about it. Actually, Han Yunxi wasn't worried about Lil Thing at all. At this moment, a guest had arrived at the Duke of Qin's estate. Actually, there were so many people who wanted to visit the Duke of Qin's estate that they could line up from the gates all the way to the outskirts of the capital. Only a few were invited inside, and most of them were invited by Han Yunxi. His Highness Duke of Qin usually didn't receive visitors. Today, the visitor was the young General Mu Qingwu. As soon as he arrived, Han Yunxi asked him what he wanted, but he simply said he was passing by and wanted to ask for a cup of tea. Since he'd already said so, Han Yunxi couldn't ask too many questions. Thus, she steeped some good tea for him. Han Yunxi might have saved Mu Qingwu's life and considered him a friend, but they had nothing to talk about. The two of them exchanged a few words before falling into an awkward silence. If she didn't compare herself to Long Fei Yi, Han Yunxi wasn't a talkative person either. She'd rather not talk than take the initiative to start a conversation. Mu Qingwu, on the other hand, was a military man who spoke to the point and didn't know how to make small talk. Thus, even if Han Yunxi, as the host, tried to find a few topics to talk about, Mu Qingwu killed them off with a few words. Han Yunxi couldn't continue. For example, Han Yunxi asked, "I heard there's been a riot at the three-way battlefield recently. What's going on?" Mu Qingwu replied, "It's just a rumor." Han Yunxi continued, "There was a riot at the three-way battlefield in the past and many people died. How did it happen?" Mu Qingwu replied, "It's all in the past. There's no need to talk about it." Han Yunxi didn't ask any more questions. However, it was fine if Mu Qingwu didn't want to talk about it, but he didn't leave either. He looked even more awkward than Han Yunxi. Finally, Han Yunxi spoke, "Young general, you must have a reason for coming here. Just say it." Mu Qingwu looked embarrassed. After hesitating for a moment, he actually stood up. "Esteemed Wang Fei, this one is here to ask for a cup of tea. It's getting late, so this one won't disturb you any longer. Farewell." Strange. Han Yunxi was puzzled, but didn't ask him to stay. "All right. Men, send the young general off." Mu Qingwu had clearly walked to the door, but he suddenly turned back. Han Yunxi knitted her brows at the sight. This man had always been straightforward, so what was wrong with him today? What was it that made him so embarrassed to speak? If it was Gu or Gu Beiyue, Han Yunxi would definitely laugh at him. However, in front of Mu Qingwu, she was more polite. She smiled and didn't say anything. Mu Qingwu took deep breaths as he walked over. He was so hesitant that he became irritated. He hated hesitant people the most. Finally, he walked in front of Han Yunxi and knelt down on one knee. "Esteemed Wang Fei, this one has a request." Han Yunxi could guess that Mu Qingwu had a request, but she couldn't guess what it was that made Mu Qingwu so hesitant and afraid to speak. "Young general, quickly get up. If you have something to say, just say it." Aside from admiration, Han Yunxi also had her own selfish motives towards Mu Qingwu. Before she'd gained a firm foothold in the Duke of Qin's estate and the capital, Mu Qingwu could be considered her support and one of her only connections. Now she hoped that she could win over the support of General Mu's estate for the Long Fei Yi. This one is truly a shame to keep troubling esteemed Wang Fei. Mu Qingwu didn't get up. Young general is treating me as an outsider. Han Yunshi personally helped him to his feet. Young general has always been a straightforward man. This Wang Fei looks down on being so coy. Mu Qingwu grew anxious before he finally spoke the truth. Esteemed Wang Fei, there's only 1 month left until the half-year deadline. Han Yunshi suddenly realized. The half-year deadline referred to Emperor Tianhui's order from Mu Qingwu to gather 300,000 taels of military pay and 200,000 dan of rations within half a year. Otherwise, he'd be demoted and investigated. What was the point of asking her for help? She had money, but that was from Long Fei Ye's gold card. She could swipe it, but she couldn't see any real gold or silver. As for the 200,000 dan of rations, that was even more difficult. Even if she had the money, she couldn't buy that much in a short period of time. Han Yunshi mulled it over before she suddenly realized something. Her eyes lit up. She was about to speak when Mu Qingwu beat her to it. Esteemed Wang Fei, this one wants to ask His Highness Duke of Qin for a few pointers, but he's already refused me 3 times. Mu Qingwu's lips curved into a self-mocking smile as he spoke. This one hasn't even seen His Highness Duke of Qin's face. Han Yunshi was astonished. Mu Qingwu had asked to see Long Fei Yi 3 times already, but he'd been refused each time. She didn't know about this at all. In other words, Mu Qingwu had tried his best before, but he hadn't asked her for help from the start. That was more like his style. Did His Highness personally refuse to see you? Han Yunshi asked seriously. I'm sure that His Highness can guess why this one sought him out, Mu Qingwu said helplessly. Han Yunshi was secretly bewildered. Didn't Long Fei Yi want to gain the support of General Mu's estate? General Mu's estate wasn't something that other powers could compare to. General Mu's estate represented Tianning's greatest military strength. Just then, she'd been pleasantly surprised that she could recommend Mu Qingwu to Long Fei Yi. Who knew that he'd long rejected him? Young general, 200,000 dan of grain is indeed. Han Yunshi pretended to be in a difficult position. But Mu Qingwu only said, Esteemed Wang Fei, His Highness Duke of Qin has a large estate in Jiangnan. This year, there's been a drought everywhere. Only Jiangnan has a bountiful harvest. What? Long Fei Yi has an estate in Jiangnan. Han Yunshi couldn't help but stroke the crystal bracelet on her wrist. Just how many things did Long Fei Yi have that she didn't know about? So this guy was actually this rich. Since that was the case, why did Long Fei Yi refuse Mu Qingwu? While Han Yunshi was puzzling over this, Long Fei Yi returned. Chapter 334. Long Fei Yi rarely returned home at this time. Han Yunshi was surprised when she saw Long Fei Yi walk in. Mu Qingwu was both nervous and happy. He never thought that he would be able to see the Duke of Qin directly today. Although he felt guilty for asking Han Yunshi for help again and again, he couldn't help but feel happy. His Highness Duke of Qin had come at the right time. He hurriedly knelt on one knee. This general greets Your Highness Duke of Qin. Long Fei Yi glanced at him. You may rise. Although Long Fei Yi was usually cold, Han Yunshi could faintly sense that something was wrong with him today. He didn't seem to be in a good mood. Han Yunshi was hesitating on how to help Mu Qingwu when Long Fei Yi sat down and asked cold, Is there something else you need? Han Yunshi and Mu Qingwu both felt awkward. Long Fei Yi sat there steadily. If this wasn't in order to chase them away, then what was it? With Long Fei Yi's intelligence, he would definitely be able to guess Mu Qingwu's intentions. His attitude was undoubtedly a disguised rejection. Han Yunshi was already hesitant about what to say. Now, she was even more hesitant. Of course, Mu Qingwu wasn't an idiot. If the Duke of Qin had such an attitude in front of Qin Wangfei, then this matter was probably hopeless. Although he was disappointed, Mu Qingwu still smiled. Your Highness Duke of Qin, esteemed Wang Fei, this general will take his leave. Unexpectedly, Han Yunxi spoke up to ask him to stay. Wait. Long Fei Yi calmly glanced at her from the corner of his eye as he sipped his tea. Young general, please sit. Han Yunxi said calmly. Mu Qingwu had come to find Han Yunxi because he had no other choice. He knew that Han Yunxi was favored, but he didn't know how much she was favored or whether the rumors were true. Mu Qingwu only knew one thing. No matter how much Han Yunxi was favored by Long Fei Yi's personality wouldn't change his attitude. Tianning's Duke of Qin wasn't a man who would allow a woman to influence his decisions. Seeing Long Fei Yi's silence, Mu Qingwu sat down in a guest seat on the side. Your Highness, the young general came to borrow grain from your Highness. Han Yunxi had used the word borrow so skillfully that even Mu Qingwu felt admiration for her. Borrow? Then when does the young general plan to return it? Long Fei Yi asked. Mu Qingwu and Han Yunxi rejoiced. They thought they had a chance, but Long Fei Yi's next words were, Young general, since last year, Ning's regions have been suffering from drought and famine. Are you aware of this? Mu Qingwu nodded seriously. This general knows. Could it be that the young general plans to borrow grain from this prince to relieve the famine? Long Fei Yi asked again. Mu Qingwu was at a loss for words. If the young general plans to borrow grain from this prince to relieve the famine, then there's no need to return it. If the young general plans to borrow grain from this prince to supplement the soldiers' rations, before Long Fei Yi could finish, Mu Qingwu stood up. This general won't lend. Many thanks to your Highness Duke of Qin, this general understands. It wasn't that Mu Qingwu didn't know about the famine, but the court had already sent out grain from the national treasury several times. Not only did they send out grain from the national treasury, but they also transferred a large sum of silver from the national treasury to buy grain from the major grain merchants in Jiangnan. Reports from the disaster areas have been full of good news recently. It wasn't just Mu Qingwu, but everyone else believed that the famine was no longer a big problem. Emperor Tianhui had asked him to collect grain because all of the grain in the national treasury had been used to relieve the famine. Mu Qingwu's expression was solemn. He knew that His Highness Duke of Qin's words meant that the famine had yet to be resolved. Then where did the grain in the national treasury go? The imperial uncle, Li Ziyuan, had always been in charge of disaster relief. Where had all the grain and silver gone? Mu Qingwu immediately bid farewell and left. Han Yunxi looked at Long Fei Yi and suddenly didn't know what to say. I acted on my own initiative, she said mildly. She never expected someone as cold as Long Fei Yi to care about the famine victims. She prided herself on her intelligence, but she'd lost count of how many times she'd felt foolish in front of this man. General Mu was such a fat piece of meat, but he hadn't seized the chance to help. There had to be a reason for that. Long Fei Yi actually nodded. Han Yunxi lowered her head pitifully like a child who'd done something wrong. But Long Fei Yi only said, starting tomorrow, you'll be in charge of everything in the estate. Although Han Yunxi was already the true mistress of the Duke of Qin's estate, Long Fei Yi still had the final say in many matters. Han Yunxi was overwhelmed by the favor. Your Highness, your lordship needs to make a trip to the Tang clan. I'll leave immediately, Long Fei Yi explained. This was probably the first time he told Han Yunxi about his whereabouts, so Han Yunxi wasn't used to it. Oh, she mumbled again. Besides, do you know how to say anything else? Long Fei Yi's tone was cold. Han Yunxi immediately said something else, but she only said, Anything else? Long Fei Yi asked again. Han Yunxi didn't even have an She looked doubtfully at Long Fei Yi and suddenly felt that Long Fei Yi was very different from usual. She couldn't put her finger on it. Was it because she talked too much? Han Yunxi was about to speak when Long Fei Yi stood up. Be careful. If there's anything you need, find Chu Shifeng and Zhao Mama. Everything had been fine before, but Long Fei Yi's words suddenly filled her heart with sadness. Han Yunxi finally realized that Long Fei Yi had been by her side the entire time. Have you packed your luggage? I'll help you. She felt like she should do something. Long Fei Yi hesitated before agreeing. Just bring a few sets of clothes. I'll wait for you at the door. All right. Han Yunxi immediately ran towards the hibiscus courtyard, narrowly missing bumping into Zhao Mama as soon as she entered. Esteemed Wang Fei, what's wrong with you? Zhao Mama was puzzled. Although her mistress wasn't from a noble family, she was always elegant and calm. His Highness is going on a long journey, so I'm helping him pack his luggage. He's waiting at the door. Han Yunxi explained as she ran towards the sleeping quarters. Zhao Mama was stunned. She'd served His Highness Duke of Qin for so many years, but she'd never helped him pack his luggage. He never liked other people touching his things, especially his clothes. Zhao Mama chased after them to the door and saw Su Xiaoyu preparing to go in with Han Yunxi. She immediately shouted, "Wait!" Han Yunxi and Su Xiaoyu were both frightened. Su Xiaoyu asked curiously, "Zhao Mama, what's wrong?" "Little you, hurry back to Leisurely Cloud Pavilion. I forgot to turn off the fire while making millet soup. Hurry and go take a look." Zhao Mama's face was full of anxiety. Su Xiaoyu looked at Zhao Mama suspiciously, but didn't move. "Why aren't you going?" "My old bones can't run. Otherwise, why would I order you around?" Zhao Mama urged unhappily. Oh. Su Xiaoyu hurriedly ran off. Han Yunxi was afraid that Long Fei Yi would wait for too long. After figuring out what was going on, she went into the room. Zhao Mama strode after her. "Esteemed Wang Fei, don't let little you, come here so often in the future. Aren't you here too?" Han Yunxi joked. "This old servant also rarely comes here. His Highness doesn't like it. This old servant is serious." Zhao Mama was very helpless. Her mistress was such a shrewd person, so why did she always like to be muddle-headed when it came to His Highness Duke of Qin? When would she be able to understand His Highness Duke of Qin's preferences? I'll remember. Actually, I also rarely come here. Han Yunxi said mildly. Very soon, Han Yunxi reached the changing room. Next to the bedroom was another large changing room. Han Yunxi had noticed it on her first day here, but after a year had passed, she discovered that this fellow still had the same few sets of clothes. There wasn't even a full wardrobe. Han Yunxi couldn't help but think of Long Fei Yi's daily life. He only had his personal bodyguard Chu Shifeng by his side. There were no servant girls or mama. There was no one to take care of his daily chores, including food and lodging when he was away from home. Han Yunxi nimbly packed up their luggage and went back to the Leisurely Cloud Pavilion to pack her own things. She wanted to go with him to the Tang clan. It was like a trip that could be taken at any time. Unfortunately, Han Yunxi was rejected. She smiled and said, "Your Highness, why don't you take me to the Tang clan to broaden my horizons? Stay at home properly. Don't run around." Long Fei Yi was probably rejecting her. Oh. Han Yunxi didn't say any more. Long Fei Yi mounted his horse and left without another word. Han Yunxi watched him until his figure disappeared completely from sight. Then she sighed softly in disappointment. Was this fellow going to the Tang clan for something important? Was it because of Tang Zijin's visit last time? She'd asked Zhao Mama about the Tang clan, but the latter said she didn't know much either. Esteemed Wangfei, don't be sad. His Highness doesn't like that place, so he won't take you, Zhao Mama comforted her. Why not? Han Yunshi asked seriously. This servant knows that His Highness never said a word when he went to the Tang clan when he was young. This servant hasn't been there either, Zhao Mama replied honestly. Zhao Mama had her ways. Her words made Han Yunshi feel much better. She smiled broadly and said, go back, then. Stay at home for a few days. Long Fei galloped out of the city by himself. Actually, Han Yunshi wasn't wrong. He really was in a bad mood. He made another trip to Medicine Ghost Valley and fought 30 rounds with Gu Qisha. Even with Gu Qisha's poisons, he still had the upper hand. Just as he was about to capture Gu Qisha cut the serpent fruit in half and threatened to destroy it if he came any closer. Gu Qisha was someone who could be persuaded by reason but not cowed by force. Naturally, he wouldn't dare destroy the serpent fruit, so Long Fei had no choice but to retreat. Meanwhile, Tang Li had already made multiple attempts to escape from the Tang clan, but to no avail. Long Fei had no choice but to make a move himself. He also had Tang Li bring along the torrential pear blossom rain so that they could go to Medicine Ghost Valley together to deal with Gu Qisha. Long Fei's journey lasted for an entire day and night without rest. The Tang clan headquarters were quite a distance away from Tianning's capital. If Long Fei didn't get there in time, Tang Li would probably be married and have children by now. That night, the galloping horses finally came to a stop. The desolate outskirts were deathly still. Long Fei drank a few mouthfuls of cold water by the stream and was about to continue on his journey when he suddenly felt the luggage tied to his horse's back. He opened it and saw that there was a small packet of pastries and a small packet of black tea hidden in his clothes. In that instant, the corners of his mouth, which had been cold and solemn all day, suddenly softened. He did not eat it, but hid it in his sleeve and continued on his way. Long Fei was gone for a few days. Han Yunshi really did stay at home for a few days, but she had no choice but to go out soon enough. Something had happened to Gu Beiyue. Chapter 335. Han Yunshi had been studying the beauty's blood at home the entire time, but the Heavenly Palace's Imperial Dr. Chen suddenly came to see her. He said that Gu Beiyue had been kneeling on the steps of the Heavenly Palace for 3 days and 3 nights because he couldn't cure the Empress Dowager's insomnia. Han Yunshi felt terrible when she heard this news and almost rushed into the palace. It had to be known that it had been raining for the past 3 days and it was early winter. Not to mention how cold the rain was, just kneeling on the white jade steps of the Heavenly Palace for a while would be unbearable for a person's knees. She couldn't imagine how weak Gu Beiyue's medicine pot body would be. Insomnia. Han Yunshi narrowed her eyes with a dangerous expression. She knew that the Empress Dowager was here for her, or more accurately, for the medicine fan. She wanted the medicine fan, but didn't dare ask her for it. She actually treated Gu Beiyue like this. It was truly despicable. It was fine if she used Gu Beiyue to threaten her, but she actually made Gu Beiyue kneel for 3 days and 3 nights before telling her. Han Yunshi became angrier the more she thought about it. She suddenly swept the teacup on the table to the ground and it hit Imperial Dr. Chen's foot. She never thought that Imperial Dr. Chen would still seek death. He pretended to be anxious. Esteemed Princess Consort, please calm down. Esteemed Princess Consort, this official secretly came to tell you this. Please calm down and think of a way to save Imperial Dr. Gu. If it was another Imperial Doctor who came to tell her this, perhaps they really did want to save Gu Beiyue. However, this Imperial Dr. Chen that Han Yunshi didn't know at all was clearly sent by the Empress Dowager. Han Yunshi angrily glared at Imperial Dr. Qin, but he quickly said, "Esteemed Princess Consort, the Empress Dowager already has insomnia and has been unable to sleep these past few days because she lost something. Her temper is very bad, so I don't know how she will torture Imperial Dr. Gu." "Is that so?" Han Yunshi suddenly picked up the teacup filled with tea and fiercely threw it at Imperial Dr. Qin. "Then why did you only come now? It's been 3 days and 3 nights, why did you only come now?" "What do you mean?" Dr. Qin was hit in the stomach and his face changed from the pain, but he still pretended, "Princess Consort, please calm your anger. This official hasn't been able to leave the palace for the past few days." "Can't leave the palace? What a coincidence." Han Yunshi sneered. "That's right, Princess Consort, this official and Imperial Physician Gu have been together for many years." Before Imperial Dr. Qin finished speaking, Han Yunshi took action. She picked up almost everything on the table and threw it at Imperial Dr. Qin. "Years of what? You still have the nerve to say that? Empress Dowager asked you to come, right? Tell me what's going on right now. Otherwise." Han Yunshi paused for a moment before shouting, "Men, close the door and release the dog." Steward Luo raised a wolf dog. It was said that other than the Duke of Qin and Qin Wangfei, it was the worst dog to provoke in the Duke of Qin's residence. Soon a large wolf dog was brought in. It had sharp fangs and was drooling. Dr. Qin was scared and immediately kneeled down. "Princess Consort, please calm your anger. This official will speak. I will tell you everything." Han Yunshi let out a sigh of relief and calmed herself down. Before she blindly entered the palace, she had to understand the situation first. Otherwise, how could she fight the Empress Dowager? Ever since the medicine fan appeared at the Empress Dowager's birthday banquet, she had been waiting for the Empress Dowager to make a move. The Empress Dowager was a smart person, so naturally she wouldn't directly ask her for it. If the Empress Dowager directly asked her for it, she would have plenty of reasons to refuse. For example, the medicine fan in her hand was an imitation, or the medicine fan had been used as medicine by her. If it was gone, the Empress Dowager wouldn't be able to do anything to her. She always knew that the Empress Dowager would make things difficult for her, but she never thought that the Empress Dowager would use Gu Beiyue as a target. Dr. Qin was so scared that he kept taking deep breaths. Han Yunshi did not have that kind of patience, so she coldly said, "Why aren't you speaking yet?" "Princess Consort, the Empress Dowager's insomnia has always been this servant's prescription. Ever since the birthday banquet, the Empress Dowager has had Imperial Physician Gu perform acupuncture on her every night to help her sleep. Imperial Physician Gu said that there wouldn't be any side effects if he cooperated with this official's prescription, but the Empress Dowager secretly stopped taking her medicine 3 days ago. As a result, she began to feel pain all over her body, so she angrily punished Imperial Physician Gu. If he didn't see the large wolf dog's white fangs, Dr. Qin might not have said this. He wished that Gu Beiyue would die. Gu Beiyue had become the head of the hospital at such a young age, so no matter what faction in the palace tried to pull him in. Not to mention the harem, there were many people in the hospital that wanted him to fall. "The Empress Dowager sent you here?" Han Yunshi coldly asked. Dr. Qin did not want to admit it, but he could only nod. "What has the old lady prepared for me?" Han Yunshi asked again. "This official does not know. The Empress Dowager sent this official to report to the Princess Consort." Dr. Qin honestly replied. "Is Imperial Physician Gu still kneeling?" Han Yunshi continued to ask. He's kneeling." Dr. Qin didn't dare to say much, but Han Yunshi asked carefully, "He's been kneeling for 3 days and 3 nights. Has he changed his clothes? Has he eaten? Has he drunk? Has he been in the rain the entire time? Esteemed Wangfei, you should hurry into the palace." This official is afraid that Imperial Physician Gu won't be able to hold on. Dr. Chen was afraid that the Empress Dowager would be dissatisfied if Han Yunxi was late. Alright, this Wang Fei will enter the palace immediately. Han Yunxi really did leave as she spoke, leaving Dr. Chen, Steward Luo, and the large wolf dog in the main hall. As soon as Han Yunxi left, Dr. Chen prepared to rise, but Steward Luo laughed and said, "Dr. Chen, esteemed Wang Fei hasn't told you to rise yet." When he finished, the large wolf dog even whimpered a few times. Dr. Chen wanted to cry, but had no tears. He could only kneel in place. This time, Han Yunxi wasn't only accompanied by Zhao Mama, but Chu Shifeng as well. Inside the carriage, Han Yunxi was deep in thought with her eyes closed, her delicate face filled with solemnity. Zhao Mama kept shooting looks at Chu Shifeng. She'd long disliked Imperial Physician Gu's visit to the estate to take esteemed Wang Fei's pulse. Judging from Zhao Mama's shrewd eyes, Imperial Physician Gu's gaze towards esteemed Wang Fei must be filled with affection. Chu Shifeng was too lazy to pay Zhao Mama any attention. In his heart, there was no one else in the world who could match His Highness Duke of Qin's charms. Esteemed Wang Fei was so love-struck that she'd probably never set her eyes on another man in this lifetime. Esteemed Wang Fei, what are you planning to do about this? Don't blame this old servant for not reminding you, but His Highness isn't in the capital. We can't afford to provoke those two in the palace, Zhao Mama said seriously. Whether it was the Empress Dowager or Emperor Tianhui, they had plenty of ways to make things difficult for esteemed Wang Fei. Their noble statuses alone were enough to suppress everything. The only reason esteemed Wang Fei had so few troubles was because His Highness was standing in front of her. Without sufficient assurance, neither the Empress Dowager nor Emperor Tianhui would touch His Highness lightly, especially after the birthday banquet. This could be said to be courteous, but it could also be said to be fearful. Han Yunxi didn't speak, but her lips pursed into a tight line. Her face was filled with displeasure. Soon enough, even Chu Shifeng couldn't help but remind her, esteemed Wang Fei, His Highness said to have you stay well at home. Only then did Han Yunxi speak, her voice cold. Don't worry, I won't be the one in trouble. It'll only be someone else. Zhao Mama and Chu Shifeng exchanged glances. This mistress of theirs was just as cold as His Highness Duke of Qin. Was she that scary when she was ruthless, or had she been influenced by His Highness Duke of Qin after spending so much time with him? Very soon, Han Yunxi arrived at the Palace of Heaven and Earth. As soon as she entered, she saw Gu Beiyue's thin, lonely back. White jade steps, red walls, and green roof tiles. There was no one in sight except for him kneeling on the steps, his black hair and white robe still dripping with water. Han Yunxi clenched her fists as her heart ached so much that she couldn't breathe. She wanted to rush over and protect him. But she couldn't do that in a place like this. She had to keep her cool. Old Empress Dowager, this time I, Han Yunxi, will make you regret it until your intestines turn green. Han Yunxi took a deep breath and strode over. She stopped by Gu Beiyue's side for less than a second before leaving without a word. But Gu Beiyue only murmured, esteemed Wang Fei, this official is fine. You mustn't be impulsive. Gu Beiyue's voice was so weak that it was barely audible. Han Yunxi's heart ached even more. She didn't dare to look at him, afraid that she'd really lose all reason. Gu Beiyue was such a good doctor and gentle person. What crime had he committed? Don't worry, I'll come out very quickly. I'll take you away as soon as I'm out. Han Yunxi's tone was resolute. She didn't stay any longer as she strode into the room. Inside the room, the Empress Dowager was lying down on the chaise lounge. Seeing Han Yunxi and the others come in, Nurse Gue quickly made a shushing gesture, indicating for them to be quiet. She's been tossing and turning all night and has just fallen asleep. Nurse Gue whispered. tossing and turning all night. Han Yunxi beat her at her own game and pretended that she didn't know anything. Isn't it the same old problem, insomnia? Dr. Gu gave her acupuncture and her entire body is in pain. Nurse Gue explained. No wonder Dr. Gu is kneeling outside. Han Yunxi said as she sat down on the side. Esteemed Wang Fei, the Empress Dowager might sleep for a bit longer. Nurse Gue whispered again. How long was a bit longer? Every second she slept, Gu Beiyue would have to kneel outside for a second longer. Let her sleep, I'll wait. Han Yunxi's smile was especially beautiful, but her eyes flashed with a cold light. Nurse Gue stood guard by the chaise lounge, Nurse Xiao by Han Yunxi's side, and Chu Tianyin outside. The room was silent. Unexpectedly, the Empress Dowager couldn't sit still after a while. Her body was itchy all over, but she couldn't pinpoint the exact spot. Her original plan was to lie down until night and have Han Yunxi wait, but she couldn't take it anymore and sat up to scratch the itch. Han Yunxi rose with a slight smile. Esteemed Empress Dowager, you're awake. The Empress Dowager was itchy, but she couldn't take it anymore. She smiled back. Yunxi's here. How long have you been here? Why didn't you wake me up? I just arrived. Yunxi heard that you've been suffering from insomnia recently, so I came to the palace to take a look. Han Yunxi took the initiative to sit by the Empress Dowager's side. Those who didn't know would think they were intimate. This is an old illness of mine. It's gotten worse recently. The Empress Dowager propped up her head with one hand and sighed helplessly. How is it so bad that even Imperial Physician Gu can't do anything about it? Han Yunxi asked seriously. This Gu Beiyue. After treating me with acupuncture for a few days, I'm aching all over. I don't even know how he became the head imperial physician. The Empress Dowager's face was full of anger. But Han Yunxi only said, Esteemed Empress Dowager, Yunxi didn't even know your insomnia was so serious. Yunxi has something good here. It's specially made to treat insomnia. Hearing Han Yunxi's words, the Empress Dowager's eyes flashed with shrewd light. She knew that it wouldn't be easy to ask Han Yunxi for something. Using Gu Beiyue as an example would be much easier. She continued to act. What good thing? Hurry and let me see it. Chapter 336. The Empress Dowager was anxious to get Han Yunxi's good thing. She was originally sick, but now she was full of energy. There were still several places on her body that were itchy. She scratched them casually and didn't pay attention to them. How could Han Yunxi take out her good thing so easily? She sneered in her heart, Your Highness, my good thing can't be used casually. I have to take a look at your body's condition first. Aijia is tormented by insomnia. Not only can't sleep, but my whole body is also sore. The Empress Dowager complained and took the initiative to take Han Yunxi's pulse. Han Yunxi casually took her hand. Judging from your Highness's pulse, you must have undergone acupuncture for several days. Imperial Physician Qin had not returned to the palace, so how could the Empress Dowager know what happened to Imperial Physician Qin in the Duke of Qin's manor? She secretly admired Han Yunxi's ability. Although this girl was proficient in the art of poison, her medical skills were not weak. She knew that she had undergone acupuncture just by taking her pulse. And, what's wrong? Did you use the wrong needle? The Empress Dowager asked slowly. Gu Beiyue was kneeling at the door. Han Yunxi was here, so she was not anxious with them. That's right. Judging from your Highness's pulse, this needle was used very well. It won't be sore. What medicine did your Highness take? Han Yunxi couldn't wait to take Gu Beiyue away immediately. She wouldn't give the Empress Dowager too much time. The Empress Dowager immediately asked Nurse Gui to bring the prescription over. The prescription was written by Imperial Physician Chen, and Gu Beiyue had also taken a look. She wanted to see how capable Han Yunxi was to see the problem with the prescription. Han Yunxi didn't look at it seriously. She just glanced at it and suddenly shouted, "Oh. Not good. What's the matter?" The Empress Dowager didn't think so. Han Yunxi exhaled a long breath. "It's troublesome. It's troublesome." Although she knew that Han Yunxi was probably just acting, the Empress Dowager was still a little nervous when she saw Han Yunxi's serious expression. She quickly asked, "What's wrong? Is there a problem with this prescription?" "There's no problem with the prescription, but if it's used together with my good stuff," Han Yunxi wanted to say something but stopped. Empress Dowager was anxious. "What? It can't be used anymore." She had been searching for the medicine fan for so many years, so she naturally knew that although it was a fan, it was also a medicine. It couldn't be used carelessly. When Gu Beiyue started to give her acupuncture, he added Imperial Dr. Chen's medicine. Moreover, Gu Beiyue made it very clear that she must take medicine after acupuncture to avoid side effects. 2 days ago, she secretly stopped taking medicine, so her whole body was sore. She had asked Imperial Dr. Chin in private if there would be a big problem with the side effects. Imperial Dr. Chin said that it was just sore and not a big problem. She had originally thought that Han Yunxi would use the prescription to absolve Gu Beiyue of his crime, but who would have thought that the prescription would actually affect the medicine fan that she had been longing for? It would be strange if she wasn't nervous. "Empress Dowager, did you really take this prescription?" Han Yunxi frowned and looked very serious. "I really did." The Empress Dowager grew serious as well. "This." Han Yunxi's face was full of worry as she muttered to herself, "It's going to be troublesome." The medicine fan she had longed for over a decade was about to be hers. If she couldn't use it because of a problem like this, wouldn't the Empress Dowager feel stifled to death? She was truly frightened by Han Yunxi's words. "Yunxi, just what happened?" "It's very troublesome." "Empress Dowager, how much medicine have you used so far?" Han Yunxi's solemn face emanated an aura of authority that no one dared to defy. The Empress Dowager didn't even think before replying truthfully, "I started with acupuncture and used 3 days. I used acupuncture and moxibustion for the next 2 days, but I didn't use any medicine." At this moment, Han Yunxi exhaled. "So that's how it is. Just what happened? Tell me." The Empress Dowager was anxious, and so was Gue Mama on the side. "Esteemed Wang Fei, don't sigh anymore. Hurry up and tell us, just what happened?" Unexpectedly, Han Yunxi's worried expression suddenly changed into a resplendent smile. "There's no problem since I didn't take any medicine for the last 2 days. It's very fortunate, Empress Dowager." "Then that's good, that's good." The Empress Dowager exhaled and smiled at Gue Mama. Both master and servant rejoiced. Han Yunxi's eyes flashed with icy light as she said coldly, "Esteemed Empress Dowager, Imperial Physician Gu must have told you that you can't stop taking medicine during acupuncture and moxibustion, or else it'll cause your entire body to ache. You stopped taking medicine for 2 days and even had Imperial Physician Gu kneel outside for 3 days and 3 nights. Isn't that inappropriate?" At these words, the Empress Dowager's smiling expression changed. She finally realized that she'd been tricked by Han Yunxi just then. She angrily slapped the table. "What a Han Yunxi, you dare to trick me!" Han Yunxi was not afraid as she stood up. How did this concubine trick the Empress Dowager? The Empress Dowager was speechless, not knowing what to say. She never thought that after struggling in the harem for so many years, she would fall into the hands of a maid like this. The Empress Dowager was not willing. However, Han Yunxi's trap was set very well. She could not find any loopholes, so she could not refute it. Esteemed Empress Dowager, since Imperial Physician Gu isn't wrong, shouldn't you let him go? Han Yunshi asked again. Although she had fallen into Han Yunshi's trap, the Empress Dowager was not easy to deal with. She coldly said, "This widow found Gu Beiyue to treat my insomnia. If he doesn't have the ability to treat it, then he can only kneel outside." Esteemed Empress Dowager, if this concubine remembers correctly, Gu Beiyue's grandfather treated the Empress Dowager in the past and gave her a prescription called the medicine fan. Han Yunshi coldly said. So what if he did? The Empress Dowager knew that Han Yunshi had done her research. She knew that Han Yunshi had deliberately taken out the medicine fan at the birthday banquet. The prescription has already been given. It's the Imperial Pharmacy's responsibility that the medicine wasn't found. What does it have to do with the doctor who treated the patient? Han Yunshi pressed on. The time she wasted here was Gu Beiyue's life. When she saw Han Yunshi's cold expression and sharp gaze, the Empress Dowager couldn't help but think of Long Fei Yi. Although the two had different temperaments, they were very similar when it came to serious matters. Today, she had truly witnessed Han Yunshi's eloquence and was completely speechless. However, she quickly pointed her spear at Han Yunshi. Han Yunshi, what kind of tone is this? How dare you speak to this widow like this? Han Yunshi ignored her arrogance and coldly said, "Esteemed Empress Dowager, the good thing this concubine is talking about is the medicine fan, but this concubine came in a hurry and didn't bring it with her. How about the Empress Dowager find someone to go back with this concubine to get it?" The Empress Dowager had waited for so long and done so much just for Han Yunshi to say these words. The unhappiness from before was thrown to the side and she couldn't hide the pleasant surprise in her eyes. She quickly said, "Nurse Gue, go back with the Princess Consort. Since Imperial Physician Gu isn't guilty, can he also leave?" Han Yunshi asked again. The Empress Dowager only wanted the medicine fan. Moreover, Gu Beiyue had already knelt for 3 days and 3 nights, so she didn't want to cause any more trouble and delay things any longer. Let him leave, otherwise this widow will feel annoyed just by looking at him. She waved her hand in disdain. Han Yunshi's eyes flashed with cold light as she suppressed her anger and turned to leave. As soon as Han Yunshi left, the Empress Dowager scratched her arms and legs again. Very soon, the itchiness disappeared without a trace. She didn't notice anything strange and was waiting with all her heart for Nurse Gue to bring back the medicine fan. Han Yunshi rushed towards Gu Beiyue as soon as she emerged and hooked his arm over her shoulder to help him up. Gu Beiyue's entire body was limp and weak. He didn't have any strength left, but he still tried his best to speak. "Esteemed Wang Fei, you can't. Shut up." Han Yunshi scolded unhappily. This guy's already so weak, but he's still not saving his strength. What's he blabbering for? Chu Shifeng watched from the sidelines, at a loss for what to do. Zhao Mamik chased after them and rushed forward to help. "Esteemed Wang Fei, let this old servant do it, let this old servant do it." Chu Shifeng recovered his wits and rushed forward. He was strong enough to snatch Gu Beiyue from Han Yunshi's hands and support him firmly. At the same time, Gu Beiyue, who'd been holding on, finally fainted. Zhao Mama silently exhaled. Thank goodness His Highness didn't see what happened just then. Otherwise, both she and Chu Shifeng would be in trouble. Soon enough, Zhao Mama saw Gu Beiyue's face. His gaunt features were so pale that they were turning purple. His lips were completely colorless. His features were clear and handsome, but his face was so still that it seemed like he'd never wake up again. Zhao Mama couldn't help but feel pained. Just how did this child manage to kneel for 3 days and 3 nights? Even a man like Chu Shifeng couldn't bear to watch any longer. He took off his outer robes and draped them over Gu Beiyue's shoulders. On the side, Han Yunxi's eyes had long turned red. She looked coldly into the room and said, "Let's go." Honorable Empress Dowagerly, what do all those years of insomnia count for? Your nightmares have only just begun. Han Yunxi directly took Gu Beiyue back to the Duke of Qin's estate and settled him in one of the guest rooms. A page boy immediately helped him change into clean clothes, only to discover that both of his knees were bruised. She left Gue Mama to wait in the guest hall while Han Yunxi took Gu Beiyue's pulse. Then she wrote a prescription for Zhao Mama to boil it. Judging from his pulse, Gu Beiyue had not only caught a severe cold, but starved himself to death. His body's energy was almost depleted. It wasn't a great loss of vitality, but a serious injury. This was the first time Han Yunxi had taken Gu Beiyue's pulse so seriously. She discovered that this fellow's body was very, very weak. Just as he'd said, he was a medicine jar. It was impossible to imagine how such a weak body had managed to hold out for 3 days and 3 nights. While waiting for the medicine, Han Yunxi ignored Gue Mama and used acupuncture on Gu Beiyue to drive away the cold and preserve his vitality. Lil Thing had been sneaking out to play for the past few days. As soon as it reached the gates, it smelled its familiar scent and was overjoyed. It shot like an arrow towards the guest room. However, when it excitedly flew in through the window and saw the young master lying unconscious on the bed, it was immediately stunned. It stood there for a long time before rubbing its eyes. When it looked again, it rushed over and ran around Gu Beiyue, squeaking non-stop. "Don't be noisy." Han Yunxi was very fierce. Lil Thing immediately shut its mouth. Its face was filled with confusion as it sniffed Gu Beiyue's body and looked at Han Yunxi. It had just sent medicine to the gentleman a few days ago. How did it become like this? The gentleman had been seriously injured for so long. Even if he had recovered from the medicine, his body would still need a period of time to recuperate. Who could tell it what had happened? Squeak squeak. Lil Thing suddenly cried out. "Didn't I tell you to be quiet?" Han Yunxi angrily reprimanded with a terrifying seriousness. Lil Thing pursed its lips and sat by the side to watch. As it watched, tears slowly flowed down. "Gentlemen, what happened to you? Can't you smile a little?" Chapter 337. Lil Thing didn't dare to disturb Mama Yunxi anymore. It sat quietly on one side and watched as Mama Yunxi inserted each needle. After a long, long time, Mama Yunxi was finally done, but the gentleman still didn't wake up. Lil Thing wiped its face with its meaty paws, wiping away its tears before jumping off the bed and disappearing like a wisp of smoke. Soon enough, it returned with a large bag of medicinal ingredients and poured them all out by the gentleman's side. Han Yunxi was currently resting by the bed, frightened by Lil Thing's actions. Lil Thing actually hid so many precious medicinal ingredients, including the extremely rare serpent fruit. Serpent fruit was one of the ingredients in the prescription to treat Mute Granny's broomcorn millet poison. Judging by the environment in which it grew, only 3 fruits could be found in all of Cloud Realm continent. She never expected Lil Thing to have one hidden away. Han Yunxi was shocked, but found it normal. After all, Lil Thing had lived for so many years that it might have hidden this serpent fruit a long time ago. The exhausted Han Yunxi reached out to pick up the serpent fruit. Seeing this, Lil Thing immediately stood up with wide eyes. "Lil Thing, your pile of things can't save Gu Beiyue. We can only wait until he recovers before we give him something to nourish his body, understand? This serpent fruit can't nourish the body, but it can save others." "I'll take it first," Han Yunxi explained gently, a completely different person from before. She was in a rush just then and hated to be disturbed while she was using needles. Lil Thing didn't blame Mama Yunxi, but it didn't understand what she meant. It thought the serpent fruit could save the gentleman. When it saw Mama Yunshi put the serpent fruit in her sleeve, it grew unhappy. It jumped onto Han Yunshi's arm and scratched with all its might. Han Yunshi had no choice but to take out the serpent fruit again and shake her head at Gu Beiyue. Lil Thing finally understood and resentfully jumped off the bed to curl up by Gu Beiyue's side. "Zhao Mama, take care of the medicinal ingredients," Han Yunshi instructed. Granny Zhao picked up all the treasures, but the little thing didn't even look at them. It curled up beside Gu Beiyue's big hand and rubbed its little head against the back of his hand before burying itself again. It was so sad that it couldn't see young master's smile. Han Yunshi watched and frowned helplessly. Why did this little thing hit it off so well with Gu Beiyue? Since the first time they met, he was already unafraid of strangers. "Little thing, don't worry. His life won't be in danger. He needs time to recover," Han Yunshi said calmly. Gu Beiyue's injuries were too severe. Not only did he need power, he also needed sleep. Perhaps fainting was a good thing for him, but he needed to replenish his food and water. "Esteemed Wang Fei, the medicine is cold. Let this old servant feed him," Granny Zhao said in a low voice, her heart heavy. At this moment, Chu Shifeng entered. "Esteemed Wang Fei, Gue Mama's throwing a tantrum." Mother Gue had already waited for almost 2 hours. "Let her wait," Han Yunshi said coldly. Back in the palace, the Empress Dowager hadn't been in a rush. Now here, she wasn't. None of His Highness Duke of Qin's subordinates were afraid of trouble. Chu Shifeng grinned. "All right." He was about to leave when Granny Zhao called him over. "Come and help him up." Only she and esteemed Wang Fei were in the room, so Granny Zhao was worried that esteemed Wang Fei would do something improper again. Fortunately, Mother Gue had come out late from the Empress Dowager's palace. Otherwise, heaven knows how the rumors would spread. Chu Shifeng understood with a single glance from Granny Zhao and sent a page boy to deal with Mother Gue. Gu Beiyue was in a severe coma, so it was difficult to feed him medicine. It took Granny Zhao and Chu Shifeng a long time to force a few mouthfuls into his mouth. Han Yunshi had finally calmed down, but grew anxious again. "I'll do it." She reached for the medicine in Granny Zhao's hands, but the latter quickly dodged. "Esteemed Wang Fei, calm down, calm down. You're so stupid. Give it to me and I'll feed him," Han Yunshi urged. Granny Zhao didn't dare. "Esteemed Wang Fei, all patients are like this. This old servant has experience, so let this old servant do it." "What nonsense are you spouting? How much have you only fed him after half a day?" Han Yunshi fumed. Unexpectedly, Lil Thing suddenly jumped onto Granny Zhao's arm and sucked up the entire bowl of medicine. All three of them were stunned. What was Lil Thing doing? They watched as Lil Thing jumped onto Gu Beiyue's body and bent down to feed him. Lil Thing fed him very, very slowly, but not a drop of medicine came out. Han Yunshi and the rest were stunned by the sight. They never expected Lil Thing to have such skills. By the time Lil Thing finished feeding him the medicine, an hour had already passed. Its head was almost numb, but when it saw that the young master's complexion had recovered a little, it was extremely happy. It jumped onto Zhao Mama's arm, wanting more medicine. "Granny Zhao, quick, pour some warm water and instruct the kitchens to boil some rice soup," Han Yunshi hurriedly ordered. Gu Beiyue needed medicine and food. At this time, he could only drink some rice soup. Eating too much or eating anything nutritious would be counterproductive. Granny Zhao immediately left, but Lil Thing foolishly followed her to the door before realizing that something was wrong. It immediately turned back. Why did it follow her? It had to guard the gentleman. Just like that, they all guarded Gu Beiyue, leaving Granny Gue hanging in the guest hall. Imperial Physician Qin was also kneeling in the guest hall. The Empress Dowager was waiting in the palace and had sent several people to urge them, but they were all rejected by Han Yunshi with one reason. Han Yunshi said, "Go back and report to esteemed Empress Dowager that His Highness has the medicine fan. This concubine can't find it and will have to wait for His Highness to return." In reality, Han Yunshi had brought the medicine fan with her when she entered the palace. At this time, the medicine fan was placed in Gu Beiyue's guest room. The Empress Dowager was so angry that she smashed things in the palace. If she had known earlier, she wouldn't have let Han Yunshi go back. But how could there be so many earliers in this world? She could only have Granny Gui wait. Granny Gui waited until night fell, and Han Yunshi finally showed her face. Granny Gui anxiously asked, "Esteemed Wang Fei, it's already so late. Why isn't His Highness back yet?" Han Yunshi had an innocent expression. "His Highness went on a long trip and will only be back in a few days." "Didn't I tell you?" Granny Gui had been waiting for an entire day and had a belly full of anger. Hearing this, she flew into a rage. She couldn't hold back for a moment. "Esteemed Wang Fei, you're doing this on purpose. Impudent." Han Yunshi coldly said, "You dare to speak to this Wang Fei like this?" These words sounded very familiar to Granny Gui. It seemed that the Empress Dowager had said the same thing to Han Yunshi in the Heavenly Palace. Granny Gui immediately regretted it. It was a pity that her reaction was too late. "Someone come, drag this audacious servant out and punish her with 50 paddles." Han Yunshi coldly said. Before beating a dog, one had to look at its owner. Before starting the Empress Dowager's nightmare, Han Yunshi wanted to slap her old face first. "Esteemed Wang Fei, please spare me. Esteemed Wang Fei, this servant was wrong. Esteemed Wang Fei, this servant doesn't dare anymore. I beg you to spare this servant just this once." Granny Gui shouted as she was dragged out. Her pleas didn't work, so she gave a warning. "Qin Wang Fei, this old servant has served the Empress Dowager for over 30 years. If you dare to touch a single hair on this old servant's head..." Before she could finish speaking, the manservant's paddle came down and Granny Gui's clamor turned into a blood-curdling scream. Imperial Physician Qin, who was kneeling in the room, trembled in fear when he heard this and didn't dare to make a sound. Granny Gui was beaten until she was half dead. Han Yunshi threw her and Imperial Physician Qin out of the door. By the next day, news of the incident had spread throughout the capital city. Just like last time when the Duke of Qin had punished the Emperor's most favored servant, Eunuch Shui, the news spread like wildfire. Although it didn't have as much influence as Eunuch Shui's case, it at least made people realize that Qin Wangfei wasn't someone to be trifled with. When news reached Long Fei Ye's ears at the distant Tang clan, he nodded in satisfaction and said, "Well beaten." Of course, he secretly sent someone to tell Chu Shifeng to keep an eye on Gu Beiyue. The Empress Dowager was so angry that she almost fainted. She had to take 3 heart pills in a row before she recovered. She wanted nothing more than to tear Han Yunshi to shreds, but Han Yunshi had a good reason for beating people up without leaving any evidence behind. The Empress Dowager waited for 3 days. Because of this, her insomnia worsened. Normally, she'd fall asleep in the second half of the night, but these 3 days, she couldn't sleep until morning. She was utterly exhausted, but couldn't fall asleep. The more she lay, the more her head hurt. When she got up, she was listless and miserable. Finally, on the 4th day, she couldn't take it anymore. "Someone come, prepare a sedan chair. I'm going to the Duke of Qin's estate. Hateful Han Yunshi. If I don't teach her a lesson, will she really think the Empress Dowager is so easy to provoke?" But just as the Empress Dowager was about to leave, Han Yunshi showed up. She was only trying to anger the Empress Dowager a little. How could she really wait until Long Fei Yi returned before taking out the medicine fan? Everything had to be done in moderation, just like tormenting this old thing. She had to keep her hanging without completely provoking her. Of course, the most important thing was that if she didn't give her the medicine fan, how could she start her nightmares? As soon as she heard the eunuch's report, the Empress Dowager immediately went back to her bed and straightened out her clothes. She also adjusted her emotions, looking as calm and composed as ever. She was rather surprised by Han Yunxi's arrival, but felt that it made sense. After all, she was the Empress Dowager, while Han Yunxi was only a princess consort. She finally knows that she's coming. Aijia will be waiting. As soon as the Empress Dowager finished speaking, Han Yunxi walked in. She was as calm and composed as usual, natural and unrestrained. This concubine pays respects to Your Highness the Empress Dowager. Greetings to Your Highness the Empress Dowager. Quickly rise. The Empress Dowager smiled kindly. Regardless of age, women competed in ruthlessness, refinement, and patience. In this case, the one who held her ground to the end would win. As soon as Han Yunxi rose, the Empress Dowager had her sit down. Aijia thought that you would only come to see Aijia after the Duke of Qin returned. How could that be? Han Yunxi smiled faintly. Is Your Highness the Empress Dowager feeling better? Weren't these words poking at the Empress Dowager's sore spot? The Empress Dowager's heart burned with anger, but she still maintained a pleasant expression. Much better. Did you sleep well? Han Yunxi looked concerned. The Empress Dowager's hands clenched into fists within her sleeves, but her expression was still amiable. Much better than a few days ago. Han Yunxi was very satisfied. Then that's good. Last night, when I was straightening out His Highness's clothes, I saw something. Esteemed Empress Dowager, can you guess what it is? As Han Yunxi spoke, Xiao Mama walked forward and presented an object wrapped in a red envelope. The Empress Dowager knew that Han Yunxi had come to deliver something, but she still couldn't help but feel moved when the object she'd been waiting for was right in front of her eyes. As the Empress Dowager, she was still human. This. The Empress Dowager was moved. Esteemed Empress Dowager, take a look. Han Yunxi was still smiling. Impatient, the Empress Dowager lifted the red cloth. Chapter 338. The Empress Dowager couldn't wait to lift the red cloth, only to see what she wanted the most, the medicine fan. This medicine fan was oval-shaped and made of extremely fine, high-grade white silk. Its handle was made of precious ivory and decorated with purple tassels. Every part of the medicine fan was extremely valuable, but none of them could compare to the two sides of the fan embroidered with fragrant grass on one side and purple lilies on the other. Fragrant grass was the most effective medicine for insomnia, while purple lilies were meant to sober the mind. Even the most severe cases of insomnia would be cured by the medicine fan. Moreover, it was easy to use and had no side effects. This was something that drinking medicine and acupuncture couldn't compare to. The Empress Dowager loved it so much that she couldn't help but lean over to take it. But Han Yunxi beat her to it and picked up the medicine fan. Han Yunxi leisurely fanned herself with the fan. Esteemed Empress Dowager, you recognize this thing, right? Of course. The Empress Dowager was very certain. Her gaze hadn't left the medicine fan at all. Suddenly, her neck began to itch, but it wasn't much different from a normal itch. She scratched it casually without taking it to heart. Esteemed Empress Dowager, Imperial Physician Gu's grandfather prescribed you this fan in the past, right? Han Yunxi asked next. Han Yunxi had asked this question before, so the Empress Dowager nodded. It's this fan. Han Yunxi didn't hand it over immediately, but toyed with it in her hands. Esteemed Empress Dowager, do you know how to use it? I do. It has two sides, one for sleeping while the other sobers the mind. The Empress Dowager finally lost her patience. Yunshi, let me take a look. Han Yunshi glanced at the Empress Dowager's scratching hand with ridicule in her eyes. She purposely offered it with both hands. Esteemed Empress Dowager, please kindly accept it. The Empress Dowager picked up the medicine fan impatiently, as if afraid that Han Yunshi would go back on her word. She flipped the fan up and down and immediately smelled its medicinal fragrance with a look of enjoyment. Han Yunshi watched coldly as her lips curved into a mocking smile. Take your time sniffing, the best part is yet to come. Han Yunshi patiently waited for the Empress Dowager to smell enough before asking, Empress Dowager, is this fake? Hee, it's still Yunshi who has the skills. The Empress Dowager said meaningfully. It's real, isn't it? Han Yunshi needed an affirmative answer. She had to be ruthless in this matter, and she had to make sure that there were no loopholes for the Empress Dowager to cause trouble for her and Gu Beiyue. The Empress Dowager had never seen a real medicine fan before, nor had she ever seen real incense or purple lilies. However, she was very familiar with these things. She knew that they couldn't be fake the moment she saw them at the birthday banquet. The medicine fan was the only one in the world that could inscribe different medicinal herbs on both sides of the same fan. Furthermore, she just fanned the opposite side of the medicine fan, and the fragrance of the purple lilies had instantly dispelled the exhaustion caused by her insomnia over the past few days. Right now, she felt completely refreshed. It's not fake, it really is the medicine fan. The Empress Dowager generously gave Han Yunshi an affirmative answer. Although she'd suffered a lot of unpleasantness after obtaining the medicine fan and even missed the chance to make things difficult for Han Yunshi, she still secretly felt grateful towards Han Yunshi when she saw the treasure she'd admired for so long. After all, she'd been searching for this item for almost 20 years without any results. Although the Empress Dowager didn't want to admit it, it was the truth. If it wasn't for Han Yunshi, she probably wouldn't have found it in this lifetime. Of course, her gratitude only lasted for a moment. In the Empress Dowager's heart, she had to give the medicine fan to anyone who found it. That's good then. Then Chinchilla won't disturb you any longer, Empress Dowager. After making things clear, Han Yunshi took her leave. The Empress Dowager didn't keep her for long, but let her go after a few polite words. As soon as Han Yunshi left, the Empress Dowager's hidden delight showed on her face. She was so happy that her mood instantly improved. She carefully stroked the medicine fan, then gently fanned it. She simply couldn't bear to part with it. She couldn't wait any longer, hoping that night would quickly fall so that she could test the medicine fan's effects and have a good night's sleep. When she fanned the medicine fan, she unconsciously scratched here and there. When Nanny Li, who had been newly promoted to replace Nanny Gue, saw this, she hurriedly asked with concern, Empress Dowager, what's wrong? Did you touch something dirty? Perhaps it's because it's just winter and my skin is too dry. My back is itching. Hurry and help me scratch it. The Empress Dowager said this while carefully examining the medicine fan, completely unaware of her body's abnormality. After Nanny Li scratched her back for a while, she stopped itching. Ever since Han Yunshi left, the Empress Dowager had been holding the medicine fan without doing anything other than waiting for the sky to darken. She'd been suffering from insomnia for so long that she'd forgotten when it was normal to fall asleep. After dinner, she and Nanny Li took a stroll around the Imperial Garden before returning. She specially took a hot bath and lay down on the bed early. Empress Dowager, let this old servant help you fan. Nanny Li volunteered. No need, you can keep vigil. It was likely that no one would be able to take the medicine fan away from the Empress Dowager now, so Nanny Li could only spread out the bedding and keep vigil on the ground. The Empress Dowager lay down lazily with a leisurely expression on her face, completely lacking the usual anxiety before falling asleep. She faced the medicine fan in front of herself and deliberately glanced at the incense before gently fanning herself. Following her movements, the faint medicinal fragrance of the incense gradually spread out and pervaded the Empress Dowager's surroundings. This fragrance had the miraculous effect of calming one's mind and relaxing one's body. Gradually, the Empress Dowager's movements became slower and slower. Her expression changed from leisurely to blissful, and then from blissful to hazy sleepiness. Not long after, she actually fell asleep. Her hand drooped and the medicine fan fell to the ground with a plop, but she still didn't wake up. Nanny Lee watched in disbelief. She waited for a long time and only carefully picked up the medicine fan after confirming that the Empress Dowager had truly fallen asleep. That night, the Empress Dowager slept very deeply. She didn't even notice when she frequently scratched herself in the second half of the night. The next day, Han Yunxi had Nanny Zhao use some money to inquire about the Heavenly Palace. Esteemed Wang Fei, the Empress Dowager went to bed very early yesterday and slept all the way until dawn. Today, all of the servants in the Heavenly Palace were rewarded. Nanny Zhao truthfully reported. "Io, you're in such a good mood." Han Yunxi was also in a good mood. "How could I not be? Sleep is her life." Esteemed Wang Fei, you're letting that old thing off so easily. Nanny Zhao was very unwilling. People often say that happiness is built on top of pain, but in reality, pain is built on top of happiness. Han Yunxi revealed a harmless smile. Happiness. Pain. What did this have to do with the medicine fan? Nanny Zhao was completely confused. Esteemed Wang Fei, this old servant doesn't understand what you mean. Let's go ask around tomorrow. Han Yunxi said mysteriously. The next day, as soon as Nanny Zhao received the news, she couldn't wait to tell Han Yunxi. Esteemed Wang Fei, the entire Heavenly Palace is in a state of panic today. I heard that even Nanny Lee, who was recently promoted, was beaten until she was crippled. The Empress Dowager used the medicine fan last night and was about to fall asleep, but she was woken up by the itch. It said that her scalp was itchy and no matter how she scratched or washed it, it wouldn't stop until morning. Nanny Zhao was very excited. Esteemed Wang Fei, did you do something to it? Han Yunxi glanced over and said with a serious expression, "Bold servant, if you dare slander this Wang Fei again, I'll drag you out and feed you to the dogs." Nanny Zhao was stunned at first, but then she smiled. She understood. Pain is built on top of happiness. If she didn't let the Empress Dowager taste the sweetness of sleep, how could she experience the pain of insomnia? It was currently evening. In the Heavenly Palace, the Empress Dowager had just woken up. After tossing and turning all night, she could only catch up on sleep during the day like before. She had clearly used the medicine fan perfectly, but for some reason, her scalp had suddenly itched last night. If it was any other day, it wouldn't matter. She was awake anyway, so she could do whatever she wanted. But last night, she had used the medicine fan to make her scalp itch. When she was drowsy and had no energy at all, she had no choice but to scratch her scalp and wash her hair. How painful must that have been? The most painful thing wasn't that she couldn't sleep even if she wanted to, but that she couldn't sleep even though she wanted to. This was simply a nightmare. She had used the medicine fan perfectly, so the Empress Dowager didn't think that it was related to it. She found several imperial physicians to take a look, but none of them could give her a reason. Her hair had always been clean, and she had never had an itchy scalp in all her years. Moreover, her entire body was fine, only her scalp was itchy. The imperial physicians even went to study the food the Empress Dowager had eaten these past few days, but they couldn't find any allergens. Since they couldn't find the cause, the imperial physicians all waited in the Heavenly Palace, waiting to see what would happen tonight. The Empress Dowager tidied up and prepared to sleep early just like the first day she obtained the medicine fan. She gently fanned herself with the medicine fan and soon felt sleepy again. But who knew that just as she was about to fall asleep, her scalp would itch again. The Empress Dowager was extremely sleepy and her consciousness was drifting. She unconsciously scratched her hair and continued to sleep. But soon, her scalp itched again and she scratched it again. This time, no matter how she scratched, it was useless. Soon, her scalp itched unbearably like last night. Unfortunately, the Empress Dowager was so sleepy that she couldn't even open her eyes. Sleepiness and itchiness coexisted, so how could she not be in pain? Someone, the Empress Dowager weakly said, "Scratch it, quickly." The newly arrived nurse Sue hurriedly came over to help her scratch the itch, but it was useless. Nurse Sue could only call for the imperial physicians. The Empress Dowager was very reluctant, but she had no choice but to get up and change her clothes. When the imperial physicians arrived, she leaned against the chaise lounge with her eyes half closed. She was so weak that she didn't even want to speak. After the imperial physicians examined her, they began to speculate. Some said it was a food allergy, some said it was a skin disease, some said it was a drug allergy, and some said it was poison. Unfortunately, there was no definite diagnosis. At this time, the Empress Dowager only wanted to sleep. She didn't have time to think. "Get out, a bunch of trash, all of you get out." She pointed at the door. Although she was furious, she didn't have the strength to throw a tantrum. That night, the Empress Dowager tossed and turned until dawn. She alternated between scratching her itch and washing her hair. The itchiness only subsided when the sun rose. The Empress Dowager was exhausted, but she didn't catch up on sleep. Instead, she ordered coldly, "Which imperial physician said that Ijo was poisoned last night? Send it in." No matter how stupid the Empress Dowager was, she could guess that something was wrong. This definitely had something to do with Han Yunxi. "Han Yunxi, if you dare poison me, you're dead meat." Chapter 339. Imperial Physician Lin, who had a close relationship with Imperial Physician Qin, guessed that the Empress Dowager was poisoned last night. He was also one of the Empress Dowager's confidants. "You diagnosed that Ijo was poisoned?" the Empress Dowager asked coldly. Of course, Imperial Physician Lin knew what the Empress Dowager was thinking. He said that she was poisoned because he wanted to point the finger at Han Yunxi and avenge Imperial Physician Qin. After all, Imperial Physician Qin knelt in the Duke of Qin's mansion for 3 days and 3 nights. Of course, the Empress Dowager's symptoms were indeed suspicious. Imperial Physician Lin was very cautious. "Empress Dowager, this official doesn't know much about poisons. Being poisoned is just this official's guess." The Empress Dowager was very displeased. "Useless things, why did Ijo raise you?" Imperial Physician Lin immediately changed his words. "Empress Dowager, this official thinks that you are most likely poisoned. To be on the safe side, it's better to ask a poison doctor to take a look." Which one of the people who made a living in the palace wasn't smart? Imperial Physician Lin could tell at a glance that the Empress Dowager wanted him to point out Han Yunxi. However, without any evidence, he would be the one who would end up the most miserably if he said it. Han Yunxi wasn't easy to deal with, and the man behind her was even more difficult to deal with. Seeing the Empress Dowager hesitate, Imperial Physician Lin quickly approached and whispered, "Empress Dowager, this official knows a poison doctor who is skilled in poisons. Why don't we ask him to take a look?" Imperial Physician Lin looked at the Empress Dowager's expression. Seeing that the Empress Dowager wasn't disgusted, he lowered his voice even more. "Empress Dowager, don't alert the enemy." The furious Empress Dowager finally calmed down. Of course, she understood what Imperial Physician Lin meant. Han Yunxi had been framed multiple times over the past year, but she'd always been able to turn misfortune into blessings. Everyone had witnessed her skills firsthand. If they directly pointed the finger at Han Yunxi now, it would be easy for Han Yunxi to shift the blame with her poison skills. After all, none of the Imperial physicians present knew poison skills. This matter could only be taken slowly. Once they had solid evidence, they could catch Han Yunxi off guard and directly put her to death. This is an opportunity. The Empress Dowager muttered to herself. The Empress Dowager is wise. Imperial Dr. Lin was secretly relieved. Quick, go and find that poison master you mentioned. I want to see him today. The Empress Dowager was very anxious. She couldn't wait to kill Han Yunxi. Of course, she was more anxious about her sleep. How could she sleep with her scalp itching like this? Previously, insomnia was just insomnia. Most of the time, he could fall asleep in the second half of the night. Occasionally, he could even sleep for a little longer. Now, as soon as he lay down, his scalp would itch, and he would be tormented the entire night until dawn. Nightmare, this was a nightmare. Imperial Physician Lin was also anxious and hurriedly excused himself to ask for help. That afternoon, Imperial Physician Lin brought the poison master into the palace. His name was Zhu Xingyang, and people called him Elder Zhu. He was a rather famous figure in the world of poison. This commoner Zhu Xingyang greets the Empress Dowager. Long live the Empress Dowager. Zhu Xingyang bowed deeply to the Empress Dowager as soon as he entered the palace. The Empress Dowager hurriedly had him rise. Has Imperial Physician Lin told you about Aijia's condition? Yes, Empress Dowagers. Before Zhu Xingyang could finish, the Empress Dowager was anxious. Quickly come and take a look. As the saying went, one who dared to provoke the lion was courting death. Since the Empress Dowager had said so, Zhu Xingyang didn't decline. He stepped forward and carefully examined the Empress Dowager's hair and scalp. According to Imperial Physician Lin, the possibility of the Empress Dowager being poisoned was very high. However, Zhu Xingyang didn't find anything after a thorough examination. Empress Dowager, may this commoner take your pulse? Zhu Xingyang asked respectfully. The Empress Dowager immediately stretched out her hand without another word. Unfortunately, Zhu Xingyang didn't find any poison after taking her pulse seriously. Zhu Xingyang hesitated and secretly glanced at Imperial Physician Lin. Imperial Physician Lin didn't understand and hurriedly asked, Zhu Xingyang, how is it? Empress Dowager, from your scalp and pulse, there are no signs of poisoning, but... The Empress Dowager hastily interrupted. Zhu Xingyang glanced at Imperial Physician Lin again and said timidly, but if we take a blood test, we might find something. The Empress Dowager was frightened. Could it be that Aijia is poisoned? No. Zhu Xingyang hurriedly explained, Empress Dowager, some poisons can't be easily detected. We have to do a blood test. The Empress Dowager was relieved. Then how much blood do you need? A small cup, Zhu Xingyang answered truthfully. The Empress Dowager thought that pricking her finger with a needle and taking a drop would be enough. She didn't expect to need so much. Her face turned pale. Zhu Xingyang and Imperial Physician Lin didn't dare to speak. The room was silent. In fact, anyone who knew a little about medicine and toxicology would know that taking so much blood meant that if the Empress Dowager was really poisoned, it must be a terrifying poison. The Empress Dowager was afraid, but she had no other choice. She frowned and said unhappily, then take it. Zhu Xingyang didn't dare to do it. He gave Imperial Physician Lin a meaningful look. Imperial Physician Lin had no choice but to do it himself. He took out a small medical knife. Empress Dowager, please stretch out your index finger. Be gentle. The Empress Dowager's face was as worried as an old tangerine. She turned her head away, not daring to look. Imperial Physician Lin's hand trembled. He hesitated for a long time before he cut. Ouch! The Empress Dowager immediately cried out, her face scrunched up in pain. For the sake of her image, she forced herself not to cry out in pain. She thought that once the test was complete and the evidence was obtained, she would make Han Yunxi pay back 10 times over for this cut. The cut wasn't small, so a small cup of blood was quickly taken. Imperial Physician Lin didn't dare delay and immediately bandaged the Empress Dowager's wound. Zhu Xingyang, quickly examine it. Jia will wait. The Empress Dowager anxiously urged. Zhu Xingyang was helpless. Replying Empress Dowager, the results won't be out until this time tomorrow at the earliest. What? The Empress Dowager couldn't hold back and blurted out, couldn't Han Yunxi detect the poison immediately? What's wrong with you? Zhu Xingyang was both innocent and embarrassed. It wasn't that he wasn't capable, but that the Empress Dowager's poison was very likely a rare type. It wasn't that simple. He had been in the poison world for so long, but this was the first time he had taken so much blood for a test. Empress Dowager, your poison might be a bit more complicated. With this official's ability, I can't detect it so quickly. Zhu Xingyang's explanation was fine, but who knew that he would hesitate and say, Empress Dowager, why don't we invite Qin Wangfei to try? At this time, the Empress Dowager would get angry at anyone who mentioned the words Han Yunxi. Zhu Xingyang actually dared to say such a thing. In that instant, the Empress Dowager's expression completely changed. She shot an angry glare at Imperial Physician Lin. Imperial Physician Lin was also innocent. How could he dare to casually talk about the matters in the palace and the open and covert strife between the Empress Dowager and Qin Wangfei to outsiders? Even if Zhu Xingyang was his good friend, he didn't dare to talk too much. He only told Zhu Xingyang about the Empress Dowager's illness. As for Zhu Xingyang, he had always been focused on studying poisons. How could he know about the powerful relationships in the imperial family? Faced with the Empress Dowager's murderous glare, Imperial Physician Lin silently lowered his head. Faced with Zhu Xingyang, who didn't know the situation, the Empress Dowager couldn't vent her anger for fear of losing face. She could only forcefully suppress her anger and let it settle in her heart. The blood had already been taken. What else could she do? Someone, she ordered coldly, someone, arrange a residence for Poison Master Zhu. She would wait. In order to obtain evidence to get rid of Han Yunxi, she was willing to endure another night of torment. After Zhu Xingyang left, the Empress Dowager angrily rebuked Imperial Physician Lin. Useless thing, is this the formidable poison master you were talking about? Your Highness, the person who poisoned you isn't simple. Imperial Physician Lin hastily explained. The Empress Dowager agreed with this reasoning. Han Yunxi's poison was definitely not ordinary. She sighed deeply. She only hoped that Poison Master Zhu wouldn't disappoint her again. Looking at the sun in the west outside, the Empress Dowager's heart was filled with fear. Tonight was destined to be another sleepless night. She was afraid of washing her hair in the middle of the night for 2 consecutive days. In the Duke of Qin's estate, Han Yunxi waited for Gu Beiyue to wake up while inquiring about news from the palace. As soon as the sky turned dark, Xiao Mama excitedly came back with news. Esteemed Wangfei, the Empress Dowager was busy all night yesterday. I heard that she invited a poison master over today, but I couldn't find out the details. That's enough. Han Yunxi gave a cold smile. The Empress Dowager hadn't come to find her immediately, which was a smart choice. But unfortunately, her cleverness had backfired on her. When had she, Han Yunxi, ever fought a battle she wasn't confident in winning. Esteemed Wang Fei, just what's going on? Why don't you tell this servant? Although Granny Zhao didn't know what the princess consort was up to, she had absolute confidence in the princess consort. With His Highness Duke of Qin's high standards, how could any woman he'd set his sights on be ordinary? Han Yunxi didn't reveal a thing beyond asking, when will Imperial Physician Huang be coming today? Tonight, Chu Tianfeng replied. Ever since receiving His Highness Duke of Qin's orders, he'd never left Gu Beiyue's room. Of course, Lil Thing was even more inseparable. Since esteemed Wang Fei wouldn't tell her, Xiao Mama could only wait to watch the show. Esteemed Wang Fei, when will Imperial Physician Gu wake up? Xiao Mama was still quite concerned. Han Yunxi had helped Gu Beiyue apply for sick leave and secretly invited Imperial Physician Huang to treat him. After all, she wasn't confident in her own medical skills. Imperial Physician Huang's skills were second only to Gu Beiyue's in the Imperial Physician courtyard. He was on good terms with Gu Beiyue in private, but few people knew about him. Han Yunxi had only discovered him after visiting the Imperial Physician courtyard a few times. With Imperial Physician Huang's treatment and Lil Thing feeding Gu Beiyue medicine, millet porridge, and water, Gu Beiyue's complexion and pulse improved considerably. Unfortunately, he still wouldn't wake up. Imperial Physician Huang wasn't sure when he'd wake up, but Han Yunxi was afraid that he'd never wake up again. Over the past few days, she didn't have time to do anything but watch over Gu Beiyue. That night, after Imperial Physician Huang finished performing acupuncture on Gu Beiyue, Han Yunxi personally saw him out the door. The entire way, they chatted in low voices. Even Su Xiaoyu, who was following behind them, had no idea what they were talking about. The night was still and silent, but one more person stayed awake in the palace. It was none other than Zhu Xingyang, the poison's master. He'd been analyzing the Empress Dowager's blood for hours on end, but hadn't found any traces of poison. Early the next morning, he went to see the Empress Dowager. Esteemed Empress Dowager, as this commoner sees it, you might not have been poisoned, Zhu Xingyang replied honestly. The Empress Dowager's fingers were still wrapped in gauze and throbbing with pain. Hearing this, she exploded. Zhu Xingyang, you better explain yourself to me or else I'll have a bucket of your blood. Chapter 340. Poor Zhu Xingyang. The Empress Dowager's bucket of blood scared him so much that his legs turned to jelly. At this moment, he deeply regretted accepting Imperial Physician Lin's invitation to serve this great ancestor in the palace. In reality, he was only 90% certain that the Empress Dowager wasn't poisoned. He wasn't sure about the remaining 10%. Based on his many years of experience in dealing with poisons, the Empress Dowager's symptoms were very similar to poisoning. However, he couldn't detect any poison in her blood even after repeatedly checking her multiple times. It could only be said that either she really wasn't poisoned, or he really couldn't detect the poison in her blood. Of course, Zhu Xingyang didn't understand the power struggles in the palace, but he still knew that he had to protect himself. Since the Empress Dowager was so dissatisfied, he didn't dare to say that he wasn't sure even if he was beaten to death. Your Highness, based on your pulse and blood tests, you really aren't poisoned. Zhu Xingyang had just said, not necessarily, but now he was so scared that he directly gave an affirmative answer. The Empress Dowager was so angry that her hair was about to burn. All of her attention was on the 3 words not poisoned, so how could she have noticed anything else? If she wasn't poisoned, she wouldn't be able to do anything to Han Yunxi. All of her efforts would have been in vain. Impossible, you must be poisoned. If you aren't poisoned, then what is it? Explain it clearly to me, the Empress Dowager demanded angrily. Your Highness, forgive this commoner for speaking bluntly, but your symptoms are very likely related to the medicine fan. Zhu Xingyang spoke very tactfully. He still had some professional ethics and wasn't lying. In this situation, the possibility of the medicine fan being poisoned was much higher than the Empress Dowager being poisoned. Unexpectedly, the Empress Dowager was suddenly overjoyed. Zhu Xingyang, you mean to say that the medicine fan is poisoned? If the medicine fan was poisoned, then it would be even more likely to point to Han Yunxi. Zhu Xingyang was truly frightened by this temperamental Empress Dowager. He answered truthfully, Your Highness, that is possible. This commoner needs to examine the medicine fan. The Empress Dowager was very generous and immediately had Nurse Su bring the medicine fan to Zhu Xingyang. Zhu Xingyang was inwardly amazed by the fan's miraculous properties. He very seriously examined the handle, face, golden rims, and even the tassels that decorated the fan. How is it? The Empress Dowager was full of anticipation. Zhu Xingyang looked up. He wanted to cry, but no tears came out. No poison. In an instant, the Empress Dowager's expectant face turned gloomy. Come on, drag this quack out, flog him 50 times, and drive him away. Zhu Xingyang was only speaking the truth. He knelt down in fright. Empress Dowager, please spare me. Spare me. Empress Dowager, this commoner has already tried his best. Empress Dowager, please spare this commoner's life for Imperial Physician Lin's sake. Even if he didn't die, he would be crippled. The Empress Dowager felt unwell all over. She fanned herself with the medicine fan without sparing Zhu Xingyang a glance. Empress Dowager. Spare me. Spare my life. Zhu Xingyang kept winking at Imperial Physician Lin, but at this critical juncture, Imperial Physician Lin could barely protect himself. How could he dare to make a sound? The Empress Dowager fanned the medicine fan with all her might, extremely irritated. Zhu Xingyang was about to be dragged out of the door when he suddenly shouted, Esteemed Empress Dowager, this commoner knows what happened. Esteemed Empress Dowager, please give this commoner another chance. The problem lies with the medicine fan. Only then did the Empress Dowager look at him. After a moment of hesitation, she waved her hand, indicating for the eunuch to withdraw. Zhu Xingyang scrambled back, Esteemed Empress Dowager, this commoner's diagnosis wasn't wrong. You really weren't poisoned, and the medicine fan isn't poisoned either. The Empress Dowager's eyes narrowed into slits at this point. She was about to reprimand him, but Zhu Xingyang didn't even dare to catch his breath before continuing. Esteemed Empress Dowager, the person who gave you the medicine fan told you that it can't be used casually. What was going on? The Empress Dowager had always known that the medicine fan was a medicine and couldn't be used casually. Han Yunxi had also mentioned this when she came to take away Gu Beiyue. Han Yunxi had even asked her about the condition of the medicine, so she was playing with her. Why can't it be used casually? Explain it clearly. The Empress Dowager was serious now. She saw hope again. If it was because of the medicine, then Han Yunxi couldn't escape responsibility either. Unexpectedly, Zhu Xingyang gave a surprising answer. Esteemed Empress Dowager, since the medicine fan is a medicine, then it must have side effects. Everyone's physique is different, so the side effects of medicine are different as well. In this commoner's opinion, it's very likely that your physique isn't suitable for the medicine fan. The itching on your scalp is a side effect. Zhu Xingyang had only just realized this problem. Even the imperial physicians from the Imperial Academy of Medicine couldn't tell what the illness was, and he couldn't detect any poison either. The chances of her being poisoned were very low, and the possibility of it being a side effect of the medicine was very high. The Empress Dowager was about to speak when her neck suddenly itched. Soon, her scalp began to itch as well. As she scratched her scalp, she recalled that she'd often felt itchy these past few days. Come to think of it, it must have only happened a few days after she'd obtained the medicine fan. Could that really be the case? Aside from the itching on the scalp, what other side effects are there? The Empress Dowager asked anxiously. Aside from her hatred for Han Yunxi, she was finally concerned about her own health. This commoner doesn't understand medicine, please forgive me, esteemed Empress Dowager. Zhu Xingyang was here to cure the poison, not to treat the illness. Imperial Physician Lin, speak. The Empress Dowager was so anxious that she couldn't care less about framing Han Yunxi. If it really was a side effect, then how was she supposed to use the medicine fan? To her, nothing was more important than the medicine fan. Replying to esteemed Empress Dowager, the medicine's side effects do exist, but, Imperial Physician Lin stammered. He wasn't familiar with the medicine fan at all, so how was he supposed to answer? Still not speaking. The Empress Dowager was very impatient. It's just that this lowly official is incompetent. This lowly official isn't sure if the medicine fan's side effects are like this. Imperial Physician Lin could only tell the truth. A bunch of trash. Trash. The Empress Dowager was furious. She'd been tormenting these two quacks for 2 days, but they still hadn't come up with anything. Men dragged them out and flogged them 50 times each. Imperial Physician Lin and Zhu Xingyang both wailed and begged for mercy. Unfortunately, the Empress Dowager didn't give them a chance this time. Who in the Imperial Academy of Medicine is the most knowledgeable about medicine? The Empress Dowager asked angrily. The most knowledgeable person in the Imperial Academy of Medicine was naturally Gu Beiyue. However, everyone present were eunuchs and nannies. They all knew that Gu Beiyue had been rescued by Qin Wangfei, so who dared to mention Gu Beiyue? In the end, Nanny Su stepped forward, esteemed Empress Dowager. Imperial Physician Huang of the Imperial Academy of Medicine is skilled in medicine and medicine. He's on par with the head of the hospital. What are you waiting for? The Empress Dowager was displeased. She had a good grasp of Gu Beiyue's abilities. Imperial Physician Huang arrived very quickly. He was dressed in Imperial Physician robes and was serious in speech and manner, neither servile nor overbearing. Add to that the fact that he was in his 50s, and he naturally had the dignified aura of a physician. After a round of questioning, Imperial Physician Huang came to a conclusion: the medicine fan is indeed not something that can be casually used. Forgive this lowly official for speaking bluntly, but based on your constitution, the medicine fan isn't suitable for you. This conclusion was like a bolt of lightning to the Empress Dowager. What did he mean by pain is built on top of happiness? It was only after she'd had a good night's sleep that she truly understood the pain of insomnia. She might as well not have obtained the medicine fan at all if she couldn't use it. No, the Empress Dowager shook her head and asked anxiously, Imperial Physician Huang, then why did I sleep so well the first night? Just like taking medicine, the side effects don't occur immediately. Instead, they develop from mild to severe. Your esteemed Empress Dowager, the itch on your scalp during the second night shouldn't have been as severe as it was during the third night, right? Imperial Physician Huang asked seriously. The Empress Dowager nodded thoughtfully. Your esteemed Empress Dowager, if you use this fan during the day, will your body often feel itchy, although not as severe as the itch on your scalp? Imperial Physician Huang asked again. This time, the Empress Dowager immediately nodded. Yes, my hands are still itching even now. Imperial Physician Huang's expression was serious. Then that's right. Your esteemed Empress Dowager, the medicine fan is used for sleeping, so the side effects are the most severe when you're sleeping at night. Imperial Physician Huang's explanation was almost identical to what was happening to the Empress Dowager, so it was hard for her not to believe him. Her face was full of worry. This side effect will continue to worsen. Imperial Physician Huang stroked his beard with a grave expression. Yes. The Empress Dowager grew nervous. Imperial Physician Huang, what should I do? Your esteemed Empress Dowager, your situation should be considered a severe side effect. You should know that once the side effects of taking medicine become severe, there's only one way to. Imperial Physician Huang didn't continue, but the Empress Dowager understood. There was only one way, and that was to stop taking the medicine. The Empress Dowager slumped heavily against the back of her chair. She felt like all the strength in her body had been sucked out of her in an instant. She'd gone to great lengths to obtain the medicine fan, but she couldn't use it anymore. How could she accept this? She stared blankly for a long time before slowly shaking her head. No, that's impossible. Imperial Physician Huang, could it be that I've been poisoned? Or was the medicine fan poisoned by someone? Imperial Physician Huang remained serious in the face of the Empress Dowager's emotional turmoil. To reply, your esteemed Empress Dowager, this official doesn't recognize poison, but the possibility isn't high. Your esteemed Empress Dowager can invite the poison doctors of the Imperial Academy of Medicine to take a look. The poison doctors of the Imperial Academy of Medicine were far inferior to Zhu Xingyang. It would be pointless for the Empress Dowager to invite them. Imperial Physician Huang, is there no other way besides stopping the medicine? The Empress Dowager asked anxiously. Imperial Physician Huang shook his head. There isn't. The Empress Dowager was thoroughly disappointed. She slumped into her seat, her eyes dimming. She didn't say anything for a long time. How could she accept this reality? She'd waited for so many years and spent so much effort, yet she was still immersed in the joy of obtaining the medicine fan. In the end, it was all for naught. What was she supposed to do? Was she supposed to hide the medicine fan and keep her eyes open until daybreak? If it were any other reason, she could still think of a way to resolve it, but it had to do with her own constitution. Someone as lofty as her finally understood what it meant to be powerless. After sitting in a daze for a long time, the Empress Dowager finally said, Imperial Physician Huang, you're not allowed to. Imperial Physician Huang was very smart and hurriedly promised, this official understands. This official doesn't know anything today. This official asks that your esteemed Empress Dowager quickly leave the medicine fan to prevent the itching from worsening. Only then did the Empress Dowager weakly wave her hand, indicating for him to withdraw. She'd failed to make things difficult for Han Yunxi, but at the very least, she couldn't let her know about this. Otherwise, she'd laugh her head off. The room was silent. None of the servants dared to make a sound. The Empress Dowager stared blankly at the medicine fan in her hand. Chapter 341. I can't bear to part with it. The Empress Dowager stared at the medicine fan as her eyes turned red. She couldn't bear to part with it. However, not long after, her arms started to itch again. When she recalled Imperial Physician Huang's instructions, she could only endure her heartache. Someone come, take this, take this. After some hesitation, she finally said, someone come, lock this medicine fan in the cabinet. Night quickly fell. The Empress Dowager leaned tiredly on the bed as she stared at the locked cabinet. Her heart felt like it was being stabbed by a knife. Tonight would be a nightmare she'd never be able to escape. Late at night, Imperial Physician Huang snuck back to the Duke of Qin's estate. After hearing him talk about today's events at the Palace of Heaven and Earth, Han Yunxi laughed out loud. Zhao Mama and Chu Shifeng were delighted as well. Everything Imperial Physician Huang had said today at the Palace of Heaven and Earth had come from Han Yunxi's instructions. Han Yunxi had poisoned the Empress Dowager the first day she entered the palace to save Gu Beiyue. It was a poison called cicada fragrance. The poison would only show its toxicity when it interacted with the medicine fan's medicinal scent. During the day, the poison's toxicity was very low and only caused a slight itch on the body. At night, it would directly affect the scalp and cause an unbearable itch. Cicada fragrance was a rare poison to begin with, while the medicine fan was a rare medicinal ingredient. Very few people understood their effects, much less the fact that the two poisoned each other. Han Yunxi was certain that the Empress Dowager would suspect her of poisoning as soon as something happened. She was confident that none of the Empress Dowager's poison experts would be able to detect cicada fragrance. If the Empress Dowager couldn't find a solution, she'd have to turn back to the Imperial Physician Courtyard. Besides Gu Beiyue, Imperial Physician Huang was the most skilled doctor there. Thus, Han Yunxi had long told Imperial Physician Huang how to deal with the situation. Esteemed Wang Fei, this move is too ruthless. This old servant admires it. Admirable. Zhao Mama had served in the palace for years, but she'd never seen anyone play like this. Why didn't she realize that esteemed Wang Fei was so two-faced? Delightful. Esteemed Wang Fei, as this subordinate sees it, the Empress Dowager will definitely take out the medicine fan. Chu Shifeng laughed. Imagining the Empress Dowager being unable to sleep, yet not daring to take out the medicine fan, being stuck between a rock and a hard place, with all kinds of painful expressions on her face, it was really satisfying. Han Yunxi looked back at Gu Beiyue, who was still unconscious, and said calmly, Gu Beiyue, I've avenged you. When will you wake up? After Han Yunxi said that, everyone quieted down. Although it was worth being happy to play a trick on the Empress Dowager, Han Yunxi couldn't really be happy until Gu Beiyue woke up. Let me take his pulse again, Imperial Physician Huang said calmly. Unexpectedly, before he could sit down, the little thing that was curled up beside Gu Beiyue's arm screamed, squeak squeak. Squeak. As it barked, it pointed at Gu Beiyue's left hand. Han Yunxi looked over and saw Gu Beiyue's left hand moving. He's moving. He's moving. Imperial Physician Huang, hurry and move. No, hurry and look. Han Yunxi was so excited that she couldn't even speak properly. Imperial Physician Huang was excited as well. He glanced at Gu Beiyue's hand and confirmed that Gu Beiyue's fingers were moving. He quickly went to examine Gu Beiyue's eyelids. Lil Thing was the most excited of all. It immediately jumped up beside Gu Beiyue's face and scratched him with its furry paws, hoping to wake him up. Imperial Physician Huang immediately took out his acupuncture needles. Esteemed Wang Fei, please step back for a moment. This official will do the needles again and there won't be any problems. Han Yunxi couldn't bear to part with him. Actually, she really wanted to say that it wasn't a big deal for a man to be bare-chested. Even if there was a problem, she didn't mind. She'd seen enough of it. Unfortunately, when she thought of the master of this mansion, she could only silently leave with Zhao Mama. As soon as they left, Zhao Mama hurriedly said, Esteemed Wang Fei, there's something this old servant doesn't know if it's appropriate to say. Han Yunxi was on guard. Zhao Mama had always been straightforward with her. Only when she was with the Long Fei Yi would she be so cautious. What was wrong with her today? Zhao Mama was helpless when she saw esteemed Wang Fei's expression. Esteemed Wang Fei, this old servant will just speak frankly. If Imperial Physician Gu wakes up, shall we send him back? Han Yunxi didn't say anything and continued to stare at Zhao Mama with raised brows. Zhao Mama felt that she didn't say anything wrong, but she felt incomparably guilty being stared at. She stammered for a long time before saying, Esteemed Wang Fei, in this situation, if this matter were to spread, it wouldn't be good for Imperial Physician Gu. After all, Imperial Physician Gu works in the palace. Han Yunxi couldn't help rolling her eyes. If the palace didn't know about my relationship with him, would they have made him like this? She didn't know what Zhao Mama was worried about. Everyone knew that she was on good terms with Gu Beiyue. Zhao Mama wanted to roll her eyes too. Her mistress looked smart, but why was she always so muddle-headed when it came to matters? Wasn't she afraid that His Highness Duke of Qin would be unhappy that she'd made Gu Beiyue stay for days? If this was any other matter, Xiao Mama would have said it long ago. But this time, it involved His Highness Duke of Qin. She couldn't just say that His Highness Duke of Qin would be angry, right? Wouldn't that make her mistress seem lacking in magnanimity? What if His Highness Duke of Qin heard her say that? What would he think? Han Yunshi was too lazy to pay Xiao Mama any attention. She simply sat on the stone steps and waited while Xiao Mama struggled to figure out what to say. Inside the room, Chu Shifeng had already helped Gu Beiyue take off his outer robes while Imperial Physician Huang applied acupuncture. Chu Shifeng had already tested Gu Beiyue's pulse and found no signs that he knew martial arts. Now that Gu Beiyue had taken off his clothes, Chu Shifeng took advantage of Imperial Physician Huang's distraction to feel a few more acupoints on Gu Beiyue's body. But the results were the same. Gu Beiyue didn't know martial arts. Chu Shifeng didn't know how His Highness Duke of Qin had set his sights on Gu Beiyue, but he wouldn't make a mistake. How could Gu Beiyue not know martial arts? Chu Shifeng couldn't figure it out no matter how much he racked his brains. He tested him a few more times, but the results were the same. It looked like he could only tell the truth to the Duke of Qin. Soon enough, Imperial Physician Huang withdrew his needles, but Gu Beiyue still hadn't woken up. Han Yunshi was disappointed when she saw him, thinking that he'd wake up soon. "How is it?" she asked worriedly. "Esteemed Wang Fei, don't worry. Imperial Physician Gu will wake up by tomorrow morning at the latest." Imperial Physician Huang was certain. Han Yunshi silently exhaled and set her mind at ease. Ever since she'd met Gu Beiyue at the general's estate, Gu Beiyue had always helped her, but also been implicated by her. If anything happened to Gu Beiyue this time, she'd die of guilt. Lil Thing didn't understand Imperial Physician Huang's words, but when it saw that Gu Beiyue still wasn't awake, it immediately jumped onto Han Yunshi's body and began to squeak non-stop. "Idiot, he'll be fine. Don't worry, he'll wake up tomorrow," Han Yunshi said with a smile. Seeing Han Yunshi smile, Lil Thing seemed to understand as well. It excitedly leapt high into the air and did a somersault before landing on the bed. Then it immediately snuggled up next to Gu Beiyue and rubbed against him like a spoiled child. Imperial Physician Huang watched in a daze, curious as to what kind of treasure this squirrel was. Still, he knew better than to ask too many questions in the Duke of Qin's estate. After confirming that Gu Beiyue would wake up, Han Yunshi felt much more relaxed. She didn't even bother to rest in the middle of the night, much less Xiao Mama's persuasion. She went straight to the Han estate storehouse to search for medicine. Chu Shifeng could only follow closely behind her. Han Yunshi found plenty of warm and nourishing medicines from the storehouse, suitable for people with weak constitutions. She took out a large bag and tossed it to Chu Shifeng. It wasn't clear whether Chu Shifeng had been influenced by Xiao Mama, but the more he looked, the more unhappy he grew. On the way back to the estate, he couldn't help but mutter, "Esteemed Wang Fei, why don't you keep such good ingredients for yourself?" "It's not like I need it," Han Yunshi replied offhandedly. "Perhaps His Highness Duke of Qin will need it," Chu Shifeng added. Han Yunshi grew amused and murmured, "I left him plenty of good things." Chu Shifeng felt helpless. He didn't know how to continue. "Chu Shifeng, you have to keep watch tonight. If Imperial Physician Gu wakes up in the middle of the night, you have to tell me," Han Yunshi instructed. Gu Beiyue was too ill, so she had to be cautious. "This subordinate knows," Chu Shifeng replied absent-mindedly. Meanwhile, the carriage was slowly passing by the back gates of General Mu's estate. Han Yunshi only glanced at it before she heard two familiar voices. The Crown Prince and Mu Qingwu. Han Yunshi was stunned. Chu Shifeng quickly turned his back so they couldn't see him. Once the carriage was far away, Han Yunxi spoke up. Chu Shifeng, I wasn't seeing things just then, right? It really was them. Strange. Chu Shifeng was stunned as well. In the past, General Mu's estate was rumored to be under the second imperial prince's control. Moreover, General Mu's behavior at the Empress Dowager's birthday banquet had been very neutral. No matter whether the estate sided with the second imperial prince or remained neutral, it was unlikely that Mu Qingwu would side with the crown prince. Why had the crown prince come out of the Mu estate's back gates in the middle of the night? Esteemed Wang Fei, could it be because of the soldiers' pay and provisions? Chu Shifeng guessed. There were only a few days left before he had to hand over the provisions to Emperor Tianhui. That's even more impossible. Han Yunxi rejected the idea. That day, Mu Qingwu had run into Long Feiyi when he came to her door to ask for her help. The Long Feiyi had already pointed out the crux of the matter. The imperial uncle's estate had embezzled most of the grain and silver from the national treasury for disaster relief. Mu Qingwu should hate the imperial uncle's estate the most, but weren't the crown prince and the imperial uncle from the same family? Just what had happened between the two of them? Han Yunxi couldn't figure it out no matter how much she thought about it. But Han Yunxi was very clear on one thing. If Mu Qingwu and the crown prince were in cahoots, then the crown prince would have an extra trump card in his hands. Without a doubt, the crown prince would stand on the emperor's side in the battle between him and the Duke of Qin. By the time Han Yunxi and Chu Shifeng returned to the estate, it was almost daybreak. Zhao Mama was personally waiting by the gates. As soon as she saw esteemed Wang Fei, she hurried to greet her. Esteemed Wang Fei, you've been tired all night. Hurry and go back to rest. How's Gu Beiyue? Has he moved? Han Yunxi asked with concern. He's moved. Lil Thing's watching over him, so it'll know as soon as there's any movement. Esteemed Wang Fei, don't worry, Zhao Mama had only one goal in mind, and that was to send esteemed Wang Fei back to Leisurely Cloud Pavilion to sleep. Unfortunately, Han Yunxi's mind was preoccupied with the unconscious Gu Beiyue. It's already daybreak, so I won't sleep. Zhao Mama grew angry and blurted out, Esteemed Wang Fei, His Highness won't be happy if you act like this. Note to the readers, follow the Genius Little Poison Consort's WeChat account Tienkakesiadofii. You can check out all sorts of character and plot reviews. Chapter 342. Zhao Mama said that if she continued to act like this, His Highness Duke of Qin would be angry. Why would His Highness Duke of Qin be angry? Han Yunxi's heart skipped a beat. If she said that she didn't understand what Zhao Mama meant, then she was definitely being pretentious. Women were always more sensitive than men when it came to matters of the heart, not to mention a woman as intelligent as Han Yunxi. She knew exactly what Granny Zhao meant. But she wasn't sure. She blinked her limpid eyes and stared at Zhao Mama without saying a word. Thinking that her mistress didn't understand, Zhao Mama anxiously sighed and tried to persuade her, Esteemed Wang Fei, after all, men and women shouldn't touch each other. Moreover, there's a difference in status. His Highness Duke of Qin isn't in the estate, and you left a grown man in the estate for so many days and even personally took care of him. This isn't appropriate. If this matter were to spread, it would damage Imperial Physician Gu's, your, and His Highness's reputation. Unexpectedly, Han Yunxi looked disappointed. That's it. So that's what Zhao Mama meant. She thought it was. Zhao Mama was stunned. This is already very serious. What else do you want? Han Yunxi's hands tugged at the hem of her clothes as she muttered, I thought he would be angry because he minds. Zhao Mama was defeated by her mistress. How could such a smart person be so muddle-headed when it came to matters of the heart? Han Yunxi's eyes brightened when she heard this. So Zhao Mama's meaning was exactly as she had thought. She looked at Zhao Mama and stared and stared. She didn't know what to think, but she suddenly smiled. Esteemed Wang Fei, are you all right? Zhao Mama was truly frightened. Han Yunxi burst into laughter. I'm fine. Imperial Physician Gu will stay in the estate to recuperate. I'll let him go when he's fully recovered. After she finished speaking, she walked around Zhao Mama, who was blocking her way, and cheerfully walked towards the guest rooms. What's wrong with her? What's going on? Zhao Mama was baffled and hurriedly chased after her. Esteemed Wang Fei, why don't you understand? If His Highness Duke of Qin comes back, he'll definitely be unhappy. Han Yunxi turned to look at her and gave her an especially bright and beautiful smile. It was so bright that it could illuminate the pitch-black Duke of Qin's estate. She said, Zhao Mama, this time, I want him to be unhappy. Long Fei, if there's still a lot of distance between us, will we get closer again this time? Zhao Mama stood rooted to the ground, unable to regain her senses for a long time. She always knew that the Princess Consort was bold, but she never thought that she would be this brave. Boldness and bravery were two different concepts. Aside from the shock and surprise, Granny Zhao liked this mistress even more. She wasn't pretentious and was so natural and unrestrained that she was so cute. Esteemed Wang Fei, wait for this old servant. This old servant will help you. Granny Zhao was overjoyed and hurriedly chased after her. Chu Shifeng's mouth twitched at the words. Should he tell His Highness Duke of Qin? It didn't seem to be that good. Moreover, how was he supposed to tell His Highness Duke of Qin? After thinking it over, Chu Shifeng decided to stay silent. He couldn't imagine what His Highness Duke of Qin's expression would look like if he told him about such matters of the heart. Abruptly, Zhao Mama turned back and warned, Little Chu, watch your mouth. Chu Shifeng rolled his eyes. I didn't hear a thing. You guys should pray for yourselves. Han Yunxi hurried to the guest room, only to see Lil Thing feeding Gu Beiyue, blood. Lil Thing had scratched its own paw and was dripping blood to feed Gu Beiyue. Frightened, Han Yunxi rushed over. Lil Thing. What are you doing? Lil Thing gave her a fright as well. It quickly extended its bloody paw towards Han Yunxi and blinked its large eyes, as if to say, Mama Yunxi, check it. There's no poison. Lil Thing was only the size of a palm, so how big could its paw be? There was a large gash in its paw, from which fresh blood poured out. Last time, Han Yunxi had been very careful with her knife when she took the antidote's blood. Heaven knows how this little beast had scratched itself. Han Yunxi's heart ached at the sight, her heart filled with disgust. Seeing Mama Yunxi's unhappy expression, Lil Thing kept feeding Gu Beiyue while squeaking. It seemed to be saying, Mama Yunxi, don't worry. As long as the gentleman drinks my blood, he'll be fine. I've eaten so many good things, my blood's very nutritious. Ever since Mama Yunxi had taken its blood for the antidote, it hadn't fully recovered. Its blood couldn't cure the poison, and the poison in its fangs wasn't very strong, but its blood was still very nutritious. It had all sorts of benefits for the gentleman's weak body. It had long wanted to feed its blood to the gentleman, but never found a chance. Han Yunxi's expression was still grave as she watched. Lil Thing had no idea that its beloved Mama Yunxi was feeling sorry for it. It kept squeaking as if comforting her. It's fine, the gentleman will be fine very soon. In the end, Han Yunxi smiled helplessly before Lil Thing stopped squeaking. Han Yunxi sat on one side, gently stroking Lil Thing's soft fur with a smile. Little beast. Why are you so good to Gu Beiyue? Lil Thing loved Mama Yunxi's touch the most. Gradually, as it fed Gu Beiyue blood, its eyes narrowed into slits as it enjoyed it. Mama Yunshi, it's so comfortable. But why am I so dizzy? Squeak squeak, Lil Thing squeaked twice before slowly collapsing onto Gu Beiyue's body. It's so tired, it really wants to sleep. Mama Yunshi, Lil Thing wants to sleep in the gentleman's arms, can I? Han Yunshi quickly scooped Lil Thing up, only to see its eyes shut as it fainted. It seemed much lighter than before, not as heavy as before. Lil Thing must have lost too much blood. She vaguely remembered Gu Beiyue saying that the little Gu Shu needed a long period of recovery after taking its blood for the antidote. Fortunately, Lil Thing couldn't die, or else Han Yunshi wouldn't know what would happen. Han Yunshi carefully treated Lil Thing's wounds before placing it in a small chest filled with all sorts of poisons and tonics. She didn't know how long it'd take for Lil Thing to wake up, but as soon as it did, it could start eating tonics. After taking care of Lil Thing, Han Yunshi remained by Gu Beiyue's bedside, with Xiao Mama and Chu Shifeng by her side. Xiao Mama was in a much better mood this time. She dearly wished that His Highness Duke of Qin would hurry back. Gu Beiyue lay there quietly. Thanks to Lil Thing's blood, his complexion was much better than before. In fact, he looked even better than before his accident. Currently, he was in a daze, half-awake state. He felt like he was dreaming, but also like he'd returned to his childhood. His parents and grandfather were still alive then. Every day, he and his father would soak in the tub of medicine to nourish their bodies and drink lots and lots of bitter medicine. Just like his father, his body had been weak from birth and he'd almost died. His mother was very gentle and often stroked his head to comfort him. Beiyue, don't be afraid. You won't die. Father and mother will always be by your side. But one day, his father fell asleep in the tub of medicine and never woke up again. His mother was still as gentle as ever, stroking his head to comfort him. Beiyue, don't be afraid. Grandfather will always be by your side. That day, his mother passed away with his father. His grandfather was as gentle as his father and mother, telling him, Beiyue, you're the only one left. You can't die. From that day onwards, his grandfather searched for all sorts of famous and wondrous medicines and forcefully used them to prop up his sickly body. It had been a very, very long time since he'd been so weak, just like how he fainted countless times when he was young. He really wanted to just fall asleep like this, but there was always a voice by his ear. Beiyue, you're the only one left. You can't die. In his daze, Gu Beiyue seemed to see his parents' gentle and loving faces again. It was as if he'd returned to his childhood when he didn't know anything and didn't know anything. But when he slowly opened his eyes, the first thing he saw was the stern and serious little face that had captivated him the most. He was slightly taken aback, but he smiled very soon. He hid away all the warmth and sorrow from his dream, leaving no trace behind. Esteemed Wang Fei, did you save me? Han Yunshi knew Gu Beiyue would wake up, but she never thought it would be so soon. She nodded in surprise and joy. Yep. It's good that you can wake up. That's fantastic. Granny Zhao was overjoyed as well. She went to pour some water in a hurry. Han Yunshi took Gu Beiyue's pulse seriously. Only when she discovered that his pulse was basically normal did she stop worrying. Esteemed Wang Fei must have used some wondrous medicine on me. Gu Beiyue knew his own body the best. There was a warm energy in his body that slowly seeped into his meridians. It was extremely beneficial to the recovery of his vitality. If it were not for the effects of this energy, he probably would have slept for a few more hours. The little thing's blood, Han Yunshi drew close and leaned over Gu Beiyue, whispering into his ear. Although Han Yunshi left very soon, Granny Zhao was stunned. Esteemed Wang Fei, even if you want to make His Highness unhappy, you can't get so close. Something big will happen. Granny Zhao hurried forward with water. She was about to insert herself between Han Yunxi and Gu Beiyue when Chu Shifeng suddenly shouted, "Who's there? Come out!" At the same time, multiple black-robed assassins rushed in from the east and west windows, all of them wielding long swords. They headed straight for Han Yunxi and Gu Beiyue. "Ah, someone come, there's an assassin." "Assassins!" Granny Zhao shouted as she stood in front of Han Yunxi to protect her. There were quite a few assassins in this group, each of them a 1 in 100 expert. Chu Shifeng was fighting one against many and couldn't hold his own after a few moves. Fortunately, the Duke of Qin's guards quickly showed up, but even they couldn't stop the assassins. Anyone who could get past the estate's layers of defenses to get here couldn't be simple. Abruptly, a sharp sword flew towards Xiao Mama's direction. Gu Beiyue could see it clearly from his bed. He cried out in alarm, "Granny Zhao, esteemed Wang Fei, watch out! Little Chu!" Granny Zhao cried out in fright, but Chu Shifeng was currently surrounded by 3 assassins. None of the other guards had time to escape either. Han Yunxi didn't bat an eyelid. Just as the sword was about to reach her, she shot out a hidden needle. But, you're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.